Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Sound check.
Okay, so it is 4 o'clock. This is a special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. And I had the agenda open. Here we go. We've got a couple things on the agenda. I am going to move things around just a little bit. So the agenda reads that public comment will begin at 4 p.m. What I'd like to do is provide for public comment to happen immediately as part of these agenda items. I think that that's more relevant to everybody. So I'm going to skip public comment opening up. We're going to do the abstract of assessment. Then we're going to do the Board of Health action after that, because I know there's a lot of interest in that and I want folks to be able to get to it quickly. And then we'll wrap the meeting up by talking about the proposed sales tax increase. So that's what you can expect. And I don't think we should begin until our county manager is in, and he should be in any moment.
And George, if I could just add one thing to what you said, my understanding is that the way we would do each one of those second items, which are the Board of Health action and the taxing action, is that we would have the staff presentation on each one of those items and then public comment, and then we'd go into our discussion and action. Is that correct? And that way,
Yes.
the public comment would be informed by our presentation, and we would be informed by both the presentation and the public comment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, and I see that we have Tim here. And I see Brian just popped in as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing on the agenda is consideration of approval of the 2021 Clear Creek County Abstract of Assessment. Diane, what do you have for us on this item?
The total taxable valuation of the county is $337,887,160. And that is down from last year from a value of $349,813,700. And that would be mostly due to Henderson.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just observe, we continue to see this trend where property values are increasing at a really big clip, yet we're still seeing our total assessed valuation go down due to the Henderson mine.
But not as much as it has in the past. I think we're finally starting to get to where, you know, we're a little more level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions from you, Randy, on this? If not, I don't have any.
No, I looked through it before the meeting a bit, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion when you are.
Yeah, I move that we approve the 2021 Clear Creek County Abstract of Assessment.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Ms. Settle. So as I stated earlier, we are going to take up the proposed public health order next. We are now sitting as the Board of Health. And the way that we're going to do this, we have 3 people to present. Dr. Ryan is going to start off. He's going to give us an update on the COVID numbers today and the rationale for this order. Our county attorney, Peter Lichtman, will go next. He's going to just describe, there's been some confusion about what this order does and doesn't do. So he's going to describe what this order does. And then we have the superintendent, Karen Kwanbeck, who is going to describe the school board perspective. Then we'll move to public comment and deliberation. So Dr. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, George. Sorry about that. So let me present here. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this is new cases here in Colorado. Across the entire country, we are a microcosm of that and a reflection of what is going on more broadly. But as you see here, case counts in this state, we are now at a 7-day average. In this country, 166,080 cases per day, a significant jump over the last several weeks, to say the least. Similarly, what you see here are new admissions of patients with confirmed COVID across the United States, significant increase over the last month and a half. Similarly, as I stated here in Colorado, so on the far right here, these red bars are reflective of what would be a graph. The blue line on the far right, furthest right, is incomplete data. So not really to be paid attention to, but this is the trend here in Colorado, following similarly across the United States. This is Colorado's pediatric case rates, broken out by age. So as you see here, 0 to 5, 18 plus, 12 to 17, and 6 to 11. Both are all age groups trending upward over the last month and a half, and particularly in the last several weeks once school began. This is Colorado's currently hospitalized confirmed COVID-19 patients. We've seen a massive spike over the last several weeks. We now have in excess of 800 patients statewide who are hospitalized due to COVID, 98% of which are in the unvaccinated. This is a point of fact. This is what's going on in Clark Creek County. Our 2-week cumulative incident rate is now at 544 per 100,000, and that number is not actually updated. We now have today as many cases in a 10-day period as we have at any point during this pandemic. Our 2-week positivity rate is at 14.19%. We tested over 110 individuals, 105 individuals on Tuesday alone. Still awaiting many of those test results to come in. So as you see, the trend both across the United States, across the state of Colorado, and across our county are all trending in the absolute wrong direction. Case counts are going up, hospitalizations are going up, and fatalities, as has historically, followed suit and has increased as well. We have lost another Clark Creek County resident in the last 2 weeks due to COVID, bringing our total deaths up to 4. And really what this is all about isn't about waiting till our hospitals are full or we have a significant number of deaths. It's about preventing those things from happening. And that's really where public health orders are trying to address that need to prevent things from getting worse than they currently are. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Peter, could you describe this order for everybody, please?
There we go. That's better. My answer was yes, of course I'll discuss it. In working with Dr. Ryan, and I know Dr. Ryan has been in close contact with the school district, we helped put together this resolution. The resolution incorporates what is the Board of Health order, which was drafted from language that Dr. Ryan had provided after consultation with a bunch of, with several different entities, and then reviewing it with the school district as well as myself as far as the legality. In many measures, it's very similar to other similar Board of Health resolutions you'll see in some neighboring counties. There are some additional things that we've added in just to make it a little clearer. When this resolution was first advertised earlier, either at the end of last week or earlier this week, it did have a different title. What happened apparently is that the resolution title that went out, even though it referenced that this particular Board of Health resolution pertains to schools and childcare settings, that particular language was at the end of the title. And some people in the community were told, I think bit by bit, the rumor got out there that this was going to be a mask mandate for the entire citizenry of Clear Creek County. That is not the case. This particular Board of Health resolution applies specifically to schools and childcare settings. So that's the first thing I want to make clear. So businesses, restaurants, this is not applicable to them. This is not applicable to anything other than a childcare center or schools. And then the Board of Health resolution actually then goes into further specifics as to what is required. So the first thing that it talks about is mask mandate. And this basically, in an effort to slow the spread of COVID-19, specifically with the Delta variant that's out there, the Board of Health has found it necessary to implement essentially these emergency measures. The first thing that it's going to implement is it's going to require all individuals aged 3 and older to wear face coverings while indoors, in schools, in childcare settings, for pre-kindergarten through grade 12. So anybody that is in a childcare setting or in a school grade, pre-K to grade 12, will be required to wear a face coverings. There are exemptions in the resolution that go down further, and I'll get to those in a moment, but that is the overall premise. The second thing that the Board of Health is deciding today or considering today is implementing another emergency measure to require that unvaccinated faculty and staff in schools and in childcare facilities undergo regular testing for COVID-19. That's, as it's further described in the resolution, is once a week. And the school district, as well as any childcare centers in the county, will be able to work with public health in order to ensure that that testing is available. Then another aspect to the order is it states that unvaccinated students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities will undergo regular testing for COVID-19. Now, let's be clear, that is not all unvaccinated students. That is not all students and adults that are just participating. That's not all unvaccinated students. It's only unvaccinated students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities. So sports, music, band, whatever that is. Only those unvaccinated students will be subjected to the regular testing. And again, that's likely going to be weekly. And then the resolution also provides that if there are staff members, faculty, students, or other individuals within the schools or the childcare settings, they will be able to, if they want to submit to any type of testing, that will be provided for them. Voluntary testing completely, it's at their discretion. For children, anybody under the age of 18, that would require a parent or legal guardian to give permission if that student wants to be submitted to regular testing. The parent, of course, could ask for that as well. So the rest of the resolution, first it goes into the findings. It explains a lot of the background with the Delta variant and the increase that Dr. Ryan has been referring to. Then it very specifically, the order itself has a definition section addressing what a childcare setting is, and that basically means all childcare facilities in Clear Creek County. It talks about what close contact is because it refers to the testing aspect, and close contact is within 3 feet for 15 minutes or more, different from the 6 feet that we tend to think about. I believe in discussing some of this with Dr. Ryan, there was a discussion as to whether or not it should be 3 feet or 6 feet, and he'll comment on that today in terms of what's social distance and what is adequate spacing. Face coverings, of course, are masks. It can also, of course, be a shield. Fully vaccinated means somebody that's actually had both doses of the COVID-19 vaccines 2 calendar weeks after that individual has received the final dose. And then school setting is basically any indoor facility used for instructions of academic or extracurricular activity for pre-K through 12th grade. So it doesn't apply to universities or anything like that, but it does include public, private, and charter schools. And basically this would apply all buildings and school property where individuals age 3 to 19 may be present. And then the order specifically states face coverings required for all individuals, age 3+ in school settings and childcare settings. Then it talks about guidance specific for these schools and childcare settings. And it explains quarantine procedures, and it talks about a monitoring system that has to be implemented by the school district or the school or childcare by September 7th. And Dr. Ryan has been working, as I said, with the school district already with that, but is certainly willing to work with any childcare facility as well, to the extent he hasn't already been doing so. It'll be a monitoring system that will basically include testing at least weekly through the 2021-2022 school year. And it will be to require all unvaccinated students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities other than spectators at these extracurricular competitions or performances to be tested at least weekly throughout the school year and present a negative test result each week to continue participation in that. It also implements this monitoring system for all unvaccinated faculty and staff to be tested at least weekly. The same rules apply as far as a negative test and being able to attend the school or childcare in person. So again, just so it's clear, this is not mandatory testing of all unvaccinated students. It is only those that participate in extracurricular activities. And then it allows for the voluntary testing of anybody that would want it. There are certain exemptions, which I'm happy to go into. Of course, anybody under the age of 3. Certain exceptions that may be questions that the board may have, and we can discuss those with Dr. Ryan. And that's essentially it. I think that's a pretty thorough overview of where we are.
Thank you for that description, Peter. And to those of you in the chat, I want to apologize in advance. I try to keep an eye on the chat to see the questions that are being asked. There's a lot of volume and I'm not going to be able to read every one of those. So next is our Superintendent of Clear Creek School District, Karen Kwanbeck. Karen, what do you have for us?
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the comments too. I'm like that kid in school who wanted to read all the notes that were coming across my desk. So while I'm speaking, I'm not watching the chat and I apologize, I'll get distracted. So thank you. Thank you for working with us. Thank you for listening to our perspective. I really wanted to spend a few minutes just sharing the perspective of the school district. And while we absolutely love all of our districts, all of our schools, including Georgetown, GCS, probably my comments represent King Murphy, Carlson, the middle school and the high school most succinctly. And again, Hillary and I have been working together as well and our board, they're fantastic. I just have had the most contact with the schools that are under my supervision. So we're very much in support of the public health order, which we believe will solidify and even add to the strategies that we're currently employing to keep kids in school. And we really appreciate that. There's a lot of noise out there and we really need to be clear about what our core mission is, which is to educate kids in the best way we know how, which means keeping them in school as much as possible. That is crystal clear to us. That is what we are all about. And that's what we'll advocate for. We really believe the best way to do this is through a layered approach, and that includes universal masking right now, hand washing, encouraging vaccinations when eligible and interested, increasing ventilation and air quality. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about some of our warm classrooms. It's been warm, and testing. And I also want to elevate that we know there's not one strategy that's 100% effective. We really believe that it's these things working together. And we know our best chance of reducing transmission is putting these things together. And sometimes those things change, they change over time based on what we learn. And we want to acknowledge that. We as a school district, as educators, we typically very much honor choice. We're a little bit concerned right now in that request to let parents do what they feel best. For example, no masks. We really feel like that puts in-person learning at risk. And again, that's a hard thing to come out and say because we do honor that choice. But in this case, we believe it will make choice more important than in-person learning. And we need our kids in school. We've seen across the state and across the nation, and especially as I talk with other superintendents and other educators, where there's loose or no mask mandates, there are higher numbers of schools shifting to remote and kids being quarantined, including entire grades. We know from talking with our kids, they really want to be in school. I do not have the heart to go classroom to classroom and tell them that they're going remote. And they tell us we're willing to do this because we want to be in school. They do not want to shift to a remote model. Our teachers very much do not want to shift to a remote model, even for short periods of time, unless it's absolutely necessary. Our educators are above a 90% vaccination rate, especially when you look at those who directly work with kids. Many of our educators are advocating for on-site testing, especially so that they can access it at school and provide access for others. So we know already with the testing being available, we'll have more than our unvaccinated staff accessing it. When I sent out some information, my email inbox was filled with, when are we going to get it? Can we have it? And I think that's really important. Some staff are asking us to help get more kids vaccinated, again, really honoring religious and health reasons, but it's about increasing access. Our educators teach in masks and they really want kids in school. And I say this with great respect to parents and families. You guys know I'm a parent myself, but please trust our educators, not one of us individually, but as a collective. We did really well last year. We kept kids in school. We doubled down on sports and activities and student events in the spring. We had kids in school for full days, not half days. And I feel like we did it well, and we worked in partnership with everyone on this call. We very much love and value our families and our parents. And I really believe the majority are in support of the strategies that we're using. But we also know the divergent voices have merit as well. They really want the best for their kids. These requests aren't coming from a negative place. We're asking that they'll trust our perspective. We are in the classroom with kids every single day. We're running schools during a pandemic. And as you've heard me say before, we are now in our third school year that's impacted by the pandemic. We've done pretty well so far. And so please trust us. And always ask questions, always bring things to us, but we're really, really focused on keeping kids in school. If I really get down to it, I feel like maybe we've lost our way a little bit, and we really need to be looking at this as a collective. And maybe part of that is paying attention to what's happening in other places too much, but also paying attention to my email and maybe Facebook a little bit too much. We need to be working together to keep our kids in school, not limiting what we can do in order to preserve choice. There's other spots that are absolutely okay for choice, but looking for every reasonable strategy to keep our kids in school. do I have a few more minutes? Do I have like one more minute or am I going on? Okay. So I wasn't going to read this, but I had an educator who shared with me a connection to our grad profile, and it makes my heart feel amazing because she said, this is really important. People might not know our perspective. And she connected each of the learner attributes to the work that you guys are doing, along with the work that we're doing in schools. And I'll just read a few of them. She said, character is being concerned for others more than ourselves. Leadership is not being afraid of making difficult or unpopular decisions. Collaboration is working together for the common good, even when we do not all agree. Critical thinking is figuring out what is best. In this case, figuring out what is best for our kids who will be making decisions on our behalf in the future. Adaptability, knowing when to shift gears if something is not working. And then lastly, communication, actively seeking out the thoughts and feelings of others, considering them and coming to a conclusion. So I just was so inspired by that connection because that's what we're about. And then just the last few things, we've had some really warm classrooms over here at the middle school, high school. I've been in and out of them today. I've been in and out of them other days. And that can feel really uncomfortable as we're masking up and we're in rooms that are hot. We had a hot August. We started a week earlier. It's a heck of a lot better today. There still are some warm rooms. We've got exhaust fans going. We've got air purifiers going into classrooms. We're actually increasing our airflow with the HVAC units. That'll take a little bit more time. And the weather will get cooler. And classes are moving locations when rooms are exceptionally hot. And normally I wouldn't bring that up, but I get it as a kid, right? Wearing your mask. I also want to highlight that our kids are really doing awesome. Sometimes I worry this is it's very anxiety producing as a parent. And yet when I'm in classrooms side by side with kids, they're fantastic, you guys. They're rocking it out and they want to be here. The very last thing I guess I feel compelled to say, and then I promise I'll be quiet. I try to ignore the rumors and the Facebook chatter, but I have some really, really big worries that I believe could impact kids when I hear some of the things that people are talking about, such as, well, if we don't get what we want, we'll protest. If we don't get what we want, we'll clog their time with requests for various things. If we don't get what we want, we're going to keep our kids home on the October 1 count. And it makes my heart hurt, but more than anything, I think those are all things that will negatively impact kids. And so I'm just coming out and begging as the district leader, let's put our kids first, whether we agree or disagree, and let them have a fantastic school year. We can do this. We have this in our power. That's all. Ask me any questions that you have.
Thank you. So the next thing on my mind is public comment. I want to just check in with you, Randy, and see if you have anything you'd like to say now, or if you think we should do public comment. And you're muted. You're muted. Randy, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. No, I didn't have anything to say, and that was a long, silent way of saying it. But other than that, I did copy out, and we can come to that later if you want. George, up to you as the chair. I kind of culled through the chat items and copied about 6 of them that were actual questions out that we could come to later. But maybe it's just best to let people speak or let people speak for a while and listen to them.
Okay. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and open it up to public comment now. Just some things to keep in mind when you're doing public comment. You will be given 5 minutes to speak. I want to encourage everyone not to repeat one another at great length, just so that we can be efficient here. If someone makes an argument that you agree with, you could just reference that person as just a suggestion. So I see we have brought over Sam McCloskey, Mayor of Silver Plume. He's going to go first. And then if you would like to make a comment, there's a button called reactions. Actually, there's just a hand raise button now. So click the button, raise your hand, and we will bring you over. We'll do our best to keep an eye on who's raising their hands when, but can't guarantee success there. So Mayor McCloskey, if you could please state your name, where you live, and we'd love to hear from you.
I am Sam McCloskey. I'm the mayor of Silver Plume. Most of my comments tonight will be kind of more pertaining to Georgetown Community Schools, simply because they're the ones I have the most experience with. As most of you probably know, Georgetown Community School right now is shut down. They're on remote learning. I have some issues with the school and the way that they handled the whole situation. But what it comes down to is we should be doing everything we can to prevent the spread of the virus and keep our kids in school. It's not doing our kids any good to be on remote learning. They need the experience of being in the classroom. If there's testing available that can be done in the school, I think the school should take advantage of it. We should have the option of using that when we need to. I'd like to see, especially Georgetown Community School, put a little more effort into planning what to do in a situation like this. Make it go a little smoother. Monday was a mess. They didn't get the word out to a lot of people that there was no school, including their transportation department. The school bus run, picked the kids up, and then a little while later, we got a call, well, your kids aren't supposed to be here. We need to be working towards trying to keep our kids in school and do everything we can to prevent it, and do testing so we know when it is spreading. Just like to see a little more planning, a little more organization on the part of the school. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. And Beth, I'm relying on you to know who raised their hands when, and feel free to maybe bring people over two at a time. Okay, next I see Liz Colgan. If you could, I know I just stated your name, but for the record, if you could state your name and where you live, we'd love to hear from you.
Let me get my video on here, sorry. Hi, my name is Liz Colgan and I live here in Georgetown. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Liz Colgan and I have been a resident of Clear Creek County for the last 16 plus years. I would like to first say I'm not speaking for everyone, but a large majority of concerned residents of Clear Creek County, and more specifically to Georgetown. My child has attended Georgetown Community School for 7 years. During this time at GCS, I have volunteered through many different avenues, which has led me to being the current president, board of directors for Georgetown Community School. During the current closing of GCS and throughout COVID, for the past 1.5 years of on and off again remote learning as well, our preschool stayed open for a full capacity with no COVID cases, symptoms, and negative results to all tested. Riddle me this, why is it the highly contagious Delta variant has not affected these toddlers? The kids seem smiles around everything and want to pick each other's noses. GCS has a saying, it's all about the kids. Well, tonight I'm here to speak up and be the voice for those kids. Wanting to mask kids 3 and up through high school is disturbing and emotionally scarring on so many levels and different ways that we won't even know the effects of until the damage has already been done and manifests itself in whatever form that may be. GCS has been an amazing place for my child, as well as so many others, to educate, learn, and grow with an amazing and caring group of educators and staff. Of course, we've had some rocky times, but what family, school, or business doesn't? The COVID mask mandates, recommendations, health advisory, guidance, however you choosing to word this at this time, has been clear as mud for the last 1.5 years. The lack of clear communication is causing a void between Georgetown Community School and the community because of the guidance it is taking from Mr. Ryan. The let's call it guidance has changed weekly, daily, and sometimes hourly. The unprofessional conversations that have been demonstrated from Mr. Ryan to, but not limited to, the new director of GCS is unacceptable. Do you commissioners condone Mr. Ryan calling to harass, bully, and even yell at Clear Creek residents and their employees? Their mandate, there was and is no mandate in effect by the state, the county, or the GCS board for a mask mandate yet. But yet Mr. Ryan is saying there was. Where can it be found? It can't, because he lied and continues fear mongering and bully tactics. This kind of guidance, misguidance, and communication is a large part of why our child is not attending Clear Creek Middle School and why my family will be leaving Clear Creek County. Please, commissioners, for the sake of our community and mainly the future of our children, do not pass resolution 21-05. In conclusion, I would like to add, GCS has had COVID protocols and masking in place since the beginning of the school year. Students wash hands several times a day during transitions and mask in all common areas, including the classroom. Students were given the option to demask when socially distanced. This is all on the GCS website and has been since the beginning of August. The GCS director, with the support of the board of directors for Georgetown Community School, made the decision to close for 2 weeks for the safety and security of our staff and students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we have Mr. Slaymaker. If you could please state your name and where you live, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Kent Slaymaker at 2036 Virginia Street in Idaho Springs. I'm the parent of a preschooler who's too young to be vaccinated. So every time I go out, I know that I'm risking bringing home, any disease, but the current global pandemic, dangerous one, is at the top of my mind.
I think we lost you, Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just part of the culture in many countries, and there's no mental damage to anybody there, which is pretty cool. Just a moment.
Kent, I apologize. We lost you for
Sure, you can
about
go see Nancy.
30 seconds there.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying that it's good to remember that masks are not damaging. We know this because many countries regularly mask up during when sicknesses are present, and there's no mental damage that happens to their kids. It's just not a thing, which is good. I would just want to say thanks for proposing simple measures to protect us and our neighbors. I can't imagine something more simple and easy than wearing a mask and getting tested if you're not vaccinated to help protect others. The cool news is that since it's all extra activities, it's very unlikely to affect preschoolers and very young ones. How many of them are in chess club,
Oh, we're losing him again.
vulnerable.
Okay, and then you cut out for that last few seconds if you want to get it in.
Sure. Just saying thanks again for proposing a bill to try to protect those of us that are most vulnerable. Apologize for the audio issues.
Thank you for dealing with a Zoom meeting here. Okay, so appreciate the comments. Next, it looks like we have Megan Vickers. If you could please state your name, where you live. And we'll give you
Hi,
comment.
good afternoon. My name is Megan Vickers. I live in Idaho Springs. I have a preschooler and a first grader at Carlson. And I just wanted to start by thanking all of the commissioners for your patience and leadership over the last year and a half. I understand that everyone is sick of wearing masks. I certainly am. I know my kids are. Unfortunately, COVID doesn't care how we feel. And it certainly doesn't discriminate. Children are more vulnerable now than they were a year ago. This is a different strain that they're more susceptible to. COVID goes for the easiest hosts that are available, which are the unvaccinated, and our children are in a congregate setting while they're in school. I feel like this is a perfect storm. I also understand that we as parents try to shield our children from unpleasantness. Unfortunately, life is full of unpleasant decisions and situations, but as the parents, we have to be able to make those decisions on behalf of our children. My kids hate when I make them clean the room or go to bed, They know they have to do it anyway because, well, I told them to, but also it's the right thing to do. It's no different if you're wearing a mask, getting tested, or getting a shot. While unpleasant, those are still better than getting ill, being hospitalized, or dying, or being responsible for putting someone else through that. Lastly, I don't understand the reluctance to follow public health guidelines and mandates. Everyone at this meeting, and in fact, everyone in the entire county, has only known life under public health directives. We wear seatbelts and helmets, we don't smoke inside, we get vaccines, we follow directives related to weather emergencies. This is our norm. Why are we fighting this? Sometimes what's best for the common good means personal sacrifice. I'm okay with that if it means that everyone's children and all of our teachers and district staff are safe. I fully support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Tom Harvey. If you could please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live. Tom, if you, we're not hearing you.
Video?
There you go.
Oh, here we go. We can hear you now, I think.
Want to or not?
Okay,
We can hear you now, Tom.
okay. Okay, I'm trying to start the video. Beth, I don't know if you're allowing that or not. Okay, Tom Harvey is my name. I live in Georgetown. There I am. I've been doing safety and risk as a career for 40 years. And one of the inviolate rules is to put lower priority risk ahead of higher priority risk. That's just not what we do. It's like a wise Cajun from South Louisiana told me once, when you're you don't want to be swatting at mosquitoes when you're in a lake full of alligators. And that's where I think we are. Let me start with some statistics. Out of the 56 million school-age children, that is less than 18 years of age, 17 and under, 400 of them have died from COVID. That is an infinitesimally small number. Statistically, it's 0.0007%. Now, during the same time period, over 400 children died. 54,771 have died from all causes. So what did they die from? It certainly wasn't from COVID. They died from unintentional injuries. CDC calls it unintentional deaths. And let's talk about deaths, because isn't that the ultimate marker we need to be involved with, deaths? They die from accidents, and most of you know the number one cause is motor vehicle crashes. That is followed by other unintentional deaths like drowning, which is the number one cause of death, age 1 to 4, from all causes, burns, suffocation, poisoning, and crushing injuries. Then that's followed by some intentional deaths, way ahead of COVID, suicide, homicide, and then there are other health-related ones like heart problems, congenital abnormalities, cancer, etc. Suffice it to say, COVID is way down the list. When it's all said and done, it won't be in the top 7 causes of death. So answer me this: why are we focused on such a low risk problem that is sucking energy, time, and your money away from the real problem? Next, and it's at the risk of causing serious mental and emotional harm, as has been discussed. Next, I would like to speak on the meeting that I listened to, the Economic Recovery Task Force, that was held 2 days ago. And from Dr. Ryan, there was very little truth in that meeting. I asked my 7-year-old daughter, yes, let that sink in. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, 7th grade at the middle school. I asked her, what were the practices for COVID they were following at GCS? And she's very detail oriented and she went through the best practice protocols. I then called the director, Hillary Miller, and I posed the same question to her, and she gave me precisely exactly the same answer. That is exactly the opposite from the picture that was painted by Dr. Ryan the other night. It was patently false. Period. It was patently false. It was distorted and it was rank hyperbole. Either he did it through some lazy ignorance or he was deliberately lying to you and to this community. Probably both. By this despicable act alone, he has lost any credibility that he might have had. He should be disciplined for purposely spreading false and misleading information. He cannot be trusted. And you guys need to deal with that. It is an absolute fact, and you will find that out as you investigate. Finally, reason with me if you can about this extracurricular activity. We have people from all over the country that funnel into Clear Creek County, all over the world, to see our beautiful Rocky Mountains. And Clear Creek County is a gateway. Tens of thousands every year, where our high school students interact with them in restaurants and places of business and just out in our communities. But yet, we think that is okay. And it is okay. But then contrast that with the risk posed by our girls volleyball team going up to Estes Park to play a volleyball game. And yet they need to be tested because they left the county. People leave this county, probably at least 1,000 or more every day, to go to work, to go do their errands and live their lives. And yet we're going to focus on extracurricular activities. I'm probably out of time. I am totally against the fear, the guilt, and the misinformation. This is not a problem that needs to be taking up all of this energy. I am against the proposal. I am against the mandates. We don't need them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comment, Tom, and to future commenters. Well, that's your timer. To future commenters, I'm gonna be a little bit more strict on name calling. I don't believe that Dr. Ryan is a liar and can't tolerate him being called a liar in this meeting. So next up is Kayla. Kayla, if you could please state your full name and where you live. We'd love to hear from you.
Kayla Weichel, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I live in Idaho Springs. So I just wanted to start off by saying thanks for allowing parents and community members to share their thoughts and concerns. I have lived in Clear Creek County for 9 years, and I have 4 students in the Clear Creek School District, one of which is a student athlete. Throughout my time in this community, I have never felt more forced into something than I have during the last year and a half. It is my understanding that we are going to start COVID testing our student athletes 2 times a week. I understand this approach has its pros. However, I feel as if it's taking it a bit too far. I think we need to be saving our tests for the symptomatic population and spending the money and time to test our students who may not even have the option to get vaccinated, and it seems like a total waste. I feel like you're looking for positives when there is no way to tell if it's an asymptomatic case or a false positive. As we are gathering more data on the new variants, we've discovered that unvaccinated individuals are not the only ones still contracting and carrying COVID. I'm not comfortable with my unvaccinated children being singled out, and I believe that the proposed approach of testing our kids and unvaccinated adults is a major overreach of our county health department and school district. We can play club sports and travel like we do with no mask restrictions and no testing requirements. That being said, if the decision is made that my students need to test twice weekly to play sports, I will be taking them to just their club sports. The district is always worried about enrollment, and I don't see these new guidelines doing anything but hindering that. As a parent, we have the right to say what we do with our students, and you're trying to take that right away from us, while also deterring our students from participating in extracurriculars. I would also hope my student doesn't get punished by my decision to not get him tested or vaccinated. He's not old enough, but don't feel assured that that will be the case if these new regulations are passed. So I'm just worried about the testing and all of that. And then also on the county website, I found that it says currently only 52.9% of Americans are fully vaccinated. And the Delta variant is causing more and more people to get sick, even those who have already been vaccinated. So I am just worried about singling out my unvaccinated student who's 11 and can't get a vaccine. So that's it. Thanks for listening. But
Thank you for taking the time to come and make sure we know your thoughts. Next, I believe we have Brian or Jordan Dunbar. If you could please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and we'd love to hear you out.
This is Brian and Jordan Dunbar. We live in Evergreen. We actually moved to the area we're just now approaching 1 year. We moved from the Midwest. So I had sent everyone an email, but we did send it kind of last minute. So I'm going to go ahead and read through it to make sure that our questions are answered. So in Karen Klumbeck's last communication, she stated that the Clear Creek School District is requiring all unvaccinated staff who work in schools to test twice weekly. As parents, we knew that all unvaccinated students were going to be next, and tonight's agenda under the Board of Health action item confirms this. Like I mentioned in my previous email, Karen attempted to answer the questions, but admitted to needing the Board of Health's opinions on some matters. I'd prefer all questions be addressed tonight by the county commissioners and Dr. Ryan prior to considering approval of the Board of Health Resolution 21-05. Please see the email below. So first, how can we justify testing only unvaccinated teachers when there are so many reports of vaccinated individuals testing positive for COVID? Second, how is this test administered? My question applies to the physical aspect. Is it blood, saliva, mucus, but also the physicality? How do you intend to perform this test so that the kids and teachers' personal choices are left unknown to others? For instance, whether or not someone decides to get the vaccine is not another person's business. The kids, for example, would not want a scarlet letter and be outcast by other students. Third, you mentioned the consideration of athletes. Is this all athletes? How often are you planning to test? 4, assuming that all unvaccinated students are next on the list, how will this play out? Do you plan on testing every single student in the district under the age of 12, since the vaccine is not available for this age group? As I mentioned in my first question, how can we possibly justify not testing every single individual due to the fact that according to new information, anyone and everyone can be a carrier and get the virus? 5, what is the turnaround time for testing results, and how will this work with teachers and kids attending school/sports while possibly positive for COVID? Do we test on Sunday so we have results on Monday? What happens when we go to 2 times a week testing? Lastly, I mentioned this to Dr. Ryan in a one-on-one conversation, but it was not properly addressed. Why are we adding this layer of protection, but we have taken away others? Why are we no longer checking temperatures? Why has the social distancing gone from 6 feet to 3 feet? Why aren't we imploring the use of air purification as a layered approach versus putting our students and teachers through this rigorous testing? So those were our questions that we sent to Karen and the school board, but we would like for the county commissioners and Dr. Ryan to address them. On top of that email that we had sent to Karen, we have some more questions. In addition to our questions to Karen above regarding COVID testing, We also have concerns over how the school district is handling mask exemptions. This too is part of the Board of Health Resolution 21-05. Clear Creek County is one of the only districts that has not provided a form that parents can fill out and have their doctors send in documentation stating the exemption. The policy that has been copied and pasted from the Clear Creek School District Policy Manual under students with special health needs is a very difficult process for parents and doctors alike to navigate. This process should not be difficult, and this mask exemption process requires its own separate protocol. With the help and documentation of my doctor, I should be able to show proof that my children, 4 of our 5 children, had horrible rashes on their faces where multiple rounds of antibiotics were required. And our youngest experienced a respiratory virus in July of all months, where we were concerned if he would be able to breathe on his own. No one can prove this summer virus wasn't caused from last year's mask mandate. Everything I've described thus far revolves solely around the physical. I haven't even mentioned the mental health consequences the masks have had on our children. Our youngest children were robbed of the foundational reading years, and they will likely be affected their entire lives. Dr. Ryan has stated in a past conversation that masks are less than 20% effective. So if half the students, and Dr. Ryan estimates half the population is refusing vaccination, so let's just assume half are against the mask mandates. So if half the students continue to wear masks and the other half decide to rely on their own God-given natural immunity, then we are still at 10% mask efficacy. And this is where number 6 above in the email to Karen comes into play. There are
Jordan, you've hit your 5 minutes. If you could wrap up.
Okay. So there are many other layered approaches we have stopped or have not yet explored. Why can't these take the place of masks so our children can get on with living normal lives? I would like for the county commissioners and Dr. Ryan to address these items tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Justin Scott. If you could please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live, and we'd love to hear you out.
Hi, everybody. My name is Justin Scott. I live in Georgetown, Colorado. I want to agree with most of the other parents, especially Tom with his statistics. I mean, that's pretty hard to argue. And first of all, I hardly know why I'm speaking or anybody else, because I think your minds are made up and you guys really don't care what we think if we think something other than you. I think what you're doing, singling out the athletes, the extracurricular children, is discriminatory. And I think the only reason you're doing it is because you can't mandate testing on everybody else legally. I think if you could mandate vaccinations on everybody legally, you would. I think this is more about what you guys want and not what everybody else wants. We hardly get a say in our own children's medical practices or what we'd like to do to our children medically because of what you want. It seems as though they're being bullied and painted into a corner by you guys. If I have a different opinion than you, you're going to do everything you can and use every avenue you can to get done what you want done. And just so you know where I come from, I have a immune suppressed son. My wife is fighting cancer right now, and I still have this point of view. My wife had a horrible reaction to the vaccine, so my children are not allowed to be vaccinated. They may have the same reaction as her. There's a lot of factors that go into this that you may not see, but I don't think you really care. You just want to do what you want to do. I don't know what else to say. I think if you're discriminating, say your special education classroom because you felt like that was the next step, I think you'd have a bigger fight than you have now. You just can't do that legally. I don't know that I have anything. Oh, one other thing is, I looked at the program that you're involved with, and it looks as though the school district, everybody is getting funding from these tests. So what is your real motivation? Is it actually public health or is it the dollars? Follow the money. You could see that a lot in government, and I think I see it here. Thanks, everybody. I'm sure I won't change your mind, but I hope I do.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Scott. Next up, we have Amanda. If you could please state your name and where you live. We'd love to hear you.
Hi, my name's Amanda Kavaleski, and I live in Idaho Springs. With the logic we're using, you guys should probably think about implementing a resolution for automobile inspections when anybody enters the county and drastically reducing the speed limit, because the percent of people hurt or killed in an auto accident is much higher, including first responders, than the percent of people hurt or killed by COVID. I feel like this is a complete overstep of any boundaries, and I 1000% do not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jen Yobski. Jen, if you could unmute yourself and state your name and where you live.
Okay, hi, everybody. I'm Jen Yobski. I live in Idaho Springs, and I am definitely opposed to this resolution, especially the testing part. The tests we've seen that they produce a lot of false positives. And well, let me back up one sec first. The way I understand it, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. It's pretty gray these days. I don't think the COVID has ever been isolated to test it. So I get why there's a lot of false positives. They've never isolated it. And in the resolution under the third whereas, where they're talking about that the Delta variant is now 99% of all COVID tests, I don't even see how they could get that, because how can they isolate the Delta when COVID hasn't been isolated? So I have a problem with trusting the tests. I know there's been a lot of false positives and negatives. Also, let me just think here for a second. I'm sorry, I'm nervous and I'm passionate. I don't believe that the vaccine has, for one, people are getting COVID with the vaccine. For two, if someone gets the vaccine and has a reaction to it, nobody is there to protect them, not you, the school board, not the vaccine companies. We're left on our own, and that is not okay. I have so many things I want to say, I'm sorry. But I did just receive this COVID school screening testing program for the 21-22 school year from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And I'm really surprised to see that under the individual incentives, it says that the participating students receive $25 for the tests and then $10 for every other one. I don't know if I'm misreading that, but it sure sounds like kind of strange that there's money involved with these tests. And I've heard that from that the school is getting money, and that's not okay. Also, I know this is not on topic of the agenda right now, but I have a child in the high school who has told me that for the past year that there's been issues with the water, okay? And I know you guys are now bringing in bottled water, but there was then issues with, okay, then there's still the ice machine. I mean, if you guys are so worried about our kids' health, water is important. And I do not understand how that cannot take priority over trying to mandate getting tested. And these tests aren't even valid. And it is very disturbing. I will take my kid out of school. We've lived here for 20 years. I'm part of this community. I love it here. I respect you guys for doing the best job that you can. I know you guys are put in a really tough situation. We all are right now, and we all need to stick together and work together. And it's all about coming from love. We need to work together, you guys. And by mandating something that is coming from a place of fear, and it's something that's not even, I'm sorry. I do not agree, and please do not pass this resolution, please. Thank you. Goodbye. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your comment. Oh, my Hollywood squares moved. I got confused for a second there. It looks like next up is Kevin Inman. Kevin, if you could state your name and where you live, I'd love to hear you out.
Hi, thank you guys for your time. My name is Kevin Inman. I live in Evergreen. My two daughters are seniors at the high school and play volleyball. And I am diametrically opposed to this resolution. I'm speaking about it as a doctor. I'm not an MD like Dr. Ryan, but my wife and I both have 21 years of practice as veterinarians. We deal with life-ending diseases regularly, and pretty much everything about what is being done throughout our country is exactly what we don't want to be doing with a viral disease. In veterinary medicine, I think we do it a lot better. In fact, we just tend to isolate the sick. We tend to keep the healthy with the healthy, the sick with the sick, and we treat what needs to be treated. So I'm gonna give kudos to Tom Harvey. I think that was amazing, Mr. Harvey, all those comments, many of the things I was gonna talk about. I'd like to touch on a little bit more on the science of it. And I've heard some comments earlier from parents that are fearful and they think the masks are great for the kids, etc. And like Mr. Harvey mentioned, children really are not at risk for this. And my family's proof of that. We have 4 children. All 4 of them had it. I had it, my wife had it, my nephew had it, my sister had it, both my wife's parents had it. The worst we had was a 1-week fever with my wife. And we've been tested, have the antibodies. And I think it's abjectly ridiculous that you would even think that we need to get our children vaccinated for this when vastly lower than 1% of the children in this country have died from this from the very beginning. This is the only disease that we have ever in recorded history spent time tracking the numbers of people that have had it rather than the numbers of deaths. What's important is morbidity and mortality. Children do not have either. For those of you who don't know what morbidity is, that is sickness from a disease. The children are not at risk. I think that we ought to focus on many other problems that we have in our district. We've had a lot of problems over the years. I chose to send my daughters there, even though I'm in Jefferson County, because they were going to be able to take part in so many amazing things at your school. I graduated from Clear Creek High School back in 1990. It's an amazing place. I fought with my wife to get my kids to go there because of that. And I'm right on the verge of yanking them out and doing homeschooling, which we did with our children that go to Jefferson County schools right now, strictly because of what's happening with this right now. I think it's very sad that you guys are doing this or thinking about doing this. Yes, masks can help maybe slightly, but maybe all you folks out there that know somebody that vapes, I'd like y'all to do an experiment, throw a vape pen in their mouth, put a mask on, see what happens when they blow out. It all comes out the sides. It's all water vapor. I think the school needs to focus on getting that air conditioning system working. The air moving is going to help a hell of a lot more than wearing a mask. And then the last thing I'd like to comment on is that something I deal with on a daily basis in my practice is something called hypercapnia. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's elevated CO2 in the bloodstream. There are a lot of issues with that, and we work very hard to have that not happen during anesthesia and with really sick patients. It dulls the mind. It changes moods. It does a lot of horrible things to us at low levels of an increase. And you guys are dealing with a bunch of children that have already enough emotional issues to be able to function properly within the environment that they're in, because they're raging with hormones and they've got all kinds of other issues. And then you throw on top of that higher CO2 levels and not being able to see everybody's faces. And I'm sorry, whoever talked about masks work in other countries and it doesn't have any deleterious effect. Those people are wearing masks when they're out on the street. They're not doing that when their little children are in their home. And for those countries where women are covered up all the time, they're not unmasked at home. Those children are learning facial expressions. There's so many studies on that, and we're forgetting all these things that you are doing to damage our children by this. Have the guts to just say no. You know, that I think that would be a really, really good thing. Let's focus on getting them some good air. Focus on that. Focus on teaching them. Let's just drop this nonsense about them wearing masks and realize that as soon as they're out of school, they're all over each other. The night before school, our twins had their birthday. And
Kevin, I hate to interrupt, Kevin.
Okay.
You've hit your
Thank you,
5 minutes.
guys.
If you could wrap it up.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much for your time. I really, really hope that you all vote against this resolution. I think this is silly. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up, I see Sarah. Sarah, if you could please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live.
Sarah Soderberg, Idaho Springs. So just going to the logic of the testing, and the statistics. So the flu is actually more dangerous for our children than the kids. In 2019, I think it's estimated that about 600 children died from the flu, and only, as others have stated, 400 over 18 months have died from COVID. So following that logic, are we setting the precedent here where we're gonna start testing for all communicable diseases? Are we gonna start testing for RSV, for influenza, for our high schoolers? Are we gonna start testing for STDs? Like, where does it stop? What precedent is this setting? Because that's a slippery slope. Anything we decide is a slippery slope and can increase the power grab that a lot of us are not comfortable with. Also, despite what some people are saying, again, agreeing with the last speaker, masks are not risk-free. Like I stated in the comments, my older son had to stop in the middle of a gym class because he started getting serious chest pain and couldn't breathe. He couldn't even make it to the sideline to get his teacher's attention to tell him that he had to take his mask down. My other child has a runny nose all the time. I don't think that it's safe for him to have a runny nose and his mask 7 hours a day. So my question is, and there's the developmental issues that come along with it also. So my question is, who is going to be liable with this mandate if my children have a medical issue due to this? Because there needs to be a liability if you're mandating something. Also, comparing, well, surgeons wear masks all day and they don't have any problems. There's so many studies that talk about, well, first of all, that's hard to compare because surgeons are standing in a air-conditioned, semi-stationary position. Our kids who have greater respiration rates and need more oxygen than adults are running around doing things, even if they're sitting in their classroom, their respiration rate is different than adults. So where are the studies that prove that this is safe to our children? And then going back to the doctors, there are many PubMed studies or whatever else that shows that a common complaint is headaches. Headaches are one of the first signs that something is not right, such as not receiving enough oxygen. If you have a headache, it is your body's warning sign that something is not going right. How many children are coming home right now with headaches, with nausea, with inability to concentrate and having trouble studying and paying attention in class? This is not risk-free. And then just to also go on to second the person speaking before, why are we not looking at antibodies? we're so focused on, let's get everybody, this doesn't pertain to this order, but we're so focused on, oh, we need 80% vaccinated to reach herd immunity. Antibodies do actually, there are studies out there that show that the antibodies from an infection is far better than the antibodies from a vaccine. So if we actually looked at antibodies from people who've had it and vaccinated people, we should be darn near herd immunity. And then also, just again, vaccination is not the only way to end this. I strongly disagree with that. There are prevention and prophylaxis and treatments that are available. They're just highly censored in this country and many other countries around the world, and it's disgusting. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your comment. Next, it looks like we have Colleen. If you could please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live, and we'd love to hear you out.
Hi, my name's Colleen McDonald. I live in Georgetown. I currently have 3 children. I have a child in middle school, a daughter in Georgetown Community School, and a baby at home. I wanted to speak up mainly because I feel my opinions are kind of on a middle ground. And I just wanted to kind of share my experience. I do not wish to vaccinate my children. However, I do want to take all of the effective measures to prevent the spread. Although I've had extremely mixed feelings on masks in the past and how they affect the children's growth and such. You know, as a parent, we always want to put them first at the highest regard. I end my back and forth conversations in my mind that masks will help slow the spread, and that's extremely important to me. The concerns parents have are definitely valid. I feel you, parents. Unfortunately, pandemics have never been convenient and sacrifices have to be made. And then again, I hear you parents saying kids shouldn't be the ones making these sacrifices, especially if COVID is not a big risk to kids. And again, hear me out. It may not be more than a common cold symptoms for a lot of the kids. There are some really struggling, I can tell you that. But those days that they're sent to school while they're contagious, whether they have no symptoms yet or light symptoms, I know parents are sending their kids to school with light symptoms, saying it's just allergies, whatever. Those kids are infecting other kids, and it's getting into the households with parents who could be high risk, with parents going to work with other people that can be high risk. I have a baby right now, and we all have COVID. So this is real, guys. This is really terrifying for me. So with that being said, it really sucks. You don't want this brought into your house, and you don't want to be the person spreading it. So not only mask mandates, but I want to bring back temperature checks. I want to do whatever we can to help slow the spread. And of course, we can do things to help make it better experience for our children, such as supplying clean masks throughout the day. I think that would be really helpful with some of the issues people are having with the bacteria, the breathing concerns. I think it's important to change your mask out at least once a day. And then, the hand washing, hand sanitizer, like everything we can do. And I hate that this has to be something our kids have to go through. And I think that instead of taking a stance on one side versus the other, let's just try to find that common ground that just makes sense for everyone. But I'm here for all you guys. This sucks. And thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you for your comment. I don't see any other hands raised. We're gonna. Oh, I see.
Justin Scott's hand is raised. Also, Shannon and Mark Gilman.
I did see that Shannon and Mark Gilman. Justin Scott, I believe his hand is still up from his comment earlier.
That's what I was thinking too, but I wasn't sure.
Okay, so we have Shannon and Mark Gilman. If you would please state your name, help me pronounce it, tell me where you live, and we'd love to hear you out.
No problem, George. My name is Shannon Gilman. I've been a resident of Clear Creek County for 25 years. My children went to Clear Creek County. I have some questions, and I would really love to hear your answers. Have you done a poll of parents? and what they feel should be done. They're the ones sending their kids to school. So, why wouldn't we ask those people? It's obvious that most of the people on this call tonight are against the mask mandate. So I'm just asking for, why can't we just have freedom to do what you think is best for your child? That is what makes the most sense to me. I raised 3 kids through Clear Creek school system. If this had been going on when my children were in school, I would be fighting it. And I'm here to support some of my friends who are going through this, which I just can't even believe that we're here. I'm also going to ask you about UV light. UV light in HVAC systems is very, very effective. UV light kills about 99.9% of viruses. So I would like an answer on that. What are positive test results considered cases? I know people that get tested every week. Are we counting everybody multiple times? And if they're just a positive test, but they have no symptoms, why would we consider them a case other than to forward an agenda? And also, if you're planning on implementing this mask mandate, is there going to be a time limit? Put a time limit on it so that there is light at the end of the tunnel for these poor parents and these poor kids having to wear masks. If somebody's afraid of the virus, let them get vaccinated. They should be fine, right? If they're vaccinated, they should be protected. If they want to wear a mask, that's fine too. It's called medical freedom. And I won't say what the opposite of that is, but thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else for public comment? I'll leave it open for about 30 seconds. I know sometimes when I have to scramble for Zoom buttons, it takes me time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. I want to thank everybody who took the time to share your thoughts with us. I'm passionate and nervous too. So the next thing that makes sense to me is that we put voice to these questions. Randy, does that make sense to you?
I think so.
Okay. And I believe you stated that you had been tracking the questions in the chat.
Well, I didn't track every single thing. What I went through, there were a lot of, there's a lot of discussion and comments going on. And I don't think we have either the time or that it would be productive to just address and have a dialogue around every comment. But I think there were specifically questions in certain places, and those justified taking a look at. And if somebody feels differently about some of the other stuff that I miss, I'll just run down through these first 5 or 6 if that's okay. And so the first one was, a person asked, if I don't want my student athlete tested, will he not be able to participate in extracurriculars anymore? And is it true that for all extracurricular activities, testing is required? That would be a question for either Tim, Peter, or Karen.
Rochambeau, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Tim can go by all means.
Yeah. And let me try to address a number of other questions I heard around some of these basic questions, right? So some of the rationale behind testing student athletes, and to be clear, the intent was to test all student athletes, not just unvaccinated students. The rationale behind that is because they are one of our Achilles heels at keeping the school open year round and having all the activities go, because they go to schools on a regular basis that do not have any enforcement of any rules. So they are of greatest risk from a school perspective than anyone else in the school. As far as the primary question, yes, the intent is to test all student athletes that participate in extracurricular activities, regardless of vaccine status, twice weekly. It is a simple nasal swab that is self-administered, a simple in the nose, round and round you go, you stick it in the tube and that's it. It literally takes about 20 seconds. And that's it. It will be administered at the school. Each of the schools will have, and we've been working on the logistics of this, will have the capability and ability to do it for any student who wants it other than the student athletes and unvaccinated staff.
Hey, Tim, I just want to elevate and think about how we word things or what we do. So we interpret extracurriculars to also mean chess club or kids in theater after school or kids who might not be traveling to other places. So just something to think about if we want to word that differently or if we want that to be the same. So, because it is our athletes, obviously, that are going out to other places and then coming back. Our chess club is pretty much a pod that's here playing chess after school.
So you're suggesting, Karen, that and Tim, I'm hearing you say that the justification behind the testing is that they're going out into places and intermingling with kids that are not that haven't been tested. And of course, they're in a maskless environment themselves when they're competing, and so therefore that's the reason for the test when they come back. And so you don't want to discriminate, I guess, and so that's why it's all athletes that are doing that. And Karen is suggesting that for extracurricular activities which remain inside the school, as long as they were done with all of the protocols in place, then that should not require testing. Is that what you're suggesting, Karen?
It is, yeah. I think that's, if I'm following the logic correctly, that would be what I'd advocate for.
And I would concur with that thinking and logic as well. Yeah, the biggest risk is when they go to another school that doesn't have a mask mandate, that has absolutely no protocol. And there are those schools, certainly in many districts around this state that are traveled to.
So that while we're on that topic, I'll just, because I think I heard Randy, you express that you're fine with that, me as well. That something, Peter, you're probably the one to figure out the right words, but something about extracurricular activities involving travel. And then I think I also heard you, Tim, say that the proposed order says it's for unvaccinated students. And I think I heard you say you want to do it for all students participating in extracurricular activities involving travel.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that is just to be clear, that is a change from what's in the language that we have right there.
Understood. So let's track these. So there's two changes I hear that were potentially tracked right now. One is that the extracurricular activities would be for those who travel and intermingle with other school populations. And the other change, the second change, number two, is that in that case, it's for both vaccinated and unvaccinated, since they each, under the current variants, I guess, Tim, you would say are carrying pretty much equal risk of potentially contracting, carrying, and shedding virus. Is that correct?
Equal risk, no, but both elevated risk to be sure, yes.
Okay.
So if I could direct Tim to the order, in section 3, subparagraph 5, there's a requirement to implement a monitoring system. Currently, it says unvaccinated students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities. What I would do is change that to implement a monitoring system which requires all students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities involving travel other than spectators at these events to be tested. And is that what you're looking for?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so then let's keep moving through the questions. And Randy, thank you for tracking them.
Tim, I didn't know if you, the next question I had was, and these will take a little bit, there were two questions. There was a question about what are the exemptions, and I think they implied also what are the exceptions. They are in the order to read. I don't know if we want to go through all of those, but that was a question that at least someone asked that they be discussed during this meeting, to at least to be listed. And if you'd like, I can just read through them, or somebody else can, Tim or Peter, or do we want to do that?
I can real quick. So exemptions are individuals under 3 years of age, individuals who, based on a clinical diagnosis reviewed and confirmed by Clear Creek School District, cannot medically tolerate a face covering. Individuals who require special educational services need that cannot be conducted while wearing a face covering. Exceptions, individuals performing any of the following activities are exempt from face covering requirements. Individuals who are hearing impaired or otherwise disabled who are communicating with someone who is hearing impaired, otherwise disabled, basically read their lips. Individuals seated during meal and snack time who are actively eating or drinking. However, individuals may be seated. And this I would, as discussed, change to 6 feet between pods. The middle school, high school, as they have it currently laid out, basically students eat in groups and stay in those groups. And those groups would be 6 feet apart. Obviously, there's not enough space in the school for every student to be 6 feet apart at lunchtime. Individuals who are asked to temporarily remove their face covering for identification purposes. Individuals who are actively engaged in public safety roles such as law enforcement personnel, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, obviously in the act of performing whatever it is they're doing. Individuals who are in a swimming pool, which is less relevant for us. When a student in school setting for academic credit is actively playing an instrument that cannot otherwise be played while wearing a face covering, and such student is at least 6 feet from others, which is the current protocol going on in the school. Individuals who are actively napping or resting, persuading to state licensing requirements. Clearly, this is intended for childcare. Students shouldn't be sleeping in elementary or high school. Individuals who are alone in an enclosed room. Individuals who are officiating or participating in a religious service or practice where the temporary removal of face covering is necessary to complete the participation in the religious activity.
And Tim, I hope you're impressed with this, but I actually tracked up you all the way through to make sure that you hit every one of them. And one was missed, which was E on exceptions. Individuals who are receiving a medical service where temporary removal of a face mask covering is necessary to perform the service. I think you scanned past it.
Thank you,
Either
Randy.
that
Yes.
or I didn't hear it, you know.
I briefly looked away, and when I went back, my eyes moved.
That's what I thought. You skipped one.
Tim, could you clarify the section B again in terms of the wording? You referenced pods, so I want to make sure that we have that exactly the way that you're anticipating.
Yeah, so Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the word used in the school is individuals are in pods. So there may be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 kids in that pod. In that pod, kids eat in those pods every day. They don't change pods. So there has to be a minimum of 6 feet between those pods, and then spacing as available within that pod as available.
Yeah, our kids are pretty good with that. And one piece that I didn't think about, coming back to the travel piece, we do have groups that come here to play. So our athletes, for example, they go out of the county, but then let's say someone's only selecting to do home games, they're still interacting. So we may want to be careful with that wording as well, because again, I think the intent is, and it's that intermingling, unless I'm not following the logic correctly.
Engaging activities, traveling and intermingling with other student populations.
Outside of the county or.
Yeah. Well, yeah, outside, you're right.
Yeah.
And really, I think the only other one which was mentioned, I don't recall if it was answered by Tim. I don't think it was. I saw it in chat once and I heard it mentioned once. Are active positive test results considered cases? It was just a specific question.
Yes. So if you have a PCR test, which is what we use as the gold standard, then yes, you have, and as everybody knows now, and we have lots and lots of links to studies and NIH and CDC and all the other medical information around masks and testing, et cetera. So if you go and get a PCR test and it is positive, our nursing staff reaches out to you and talks to you. Not all of those individuals are immediately symptomatic. Some, as we know now, are not symptomatic. They are in the absolute minority. the vast majority of individuals who test positive are in fact symptomatic, some all the way to death. So we do count each one of those cases. If an individual is tested twice in 2 months, for instance, we count them as one case. We do not count them as two cases. We're not multiplying the number. Right now, we have active over 42 cases actively right now in this county. It's the highest, one of the highest numbers we've had at any point during this entire pandemic.
There's another question in here that was, I'm sorry, this is jumping around because I just saw it in chat. It discussed the percentages of deaths. It was brought up, first of all, by Tom Harvey in his comments earlier, and someone else just referred to it, about the percentages of deaths among children throughout the pandemic. And my question for Tim is that my understanding was that in the current environment, although it's really early on in that current environment, that both the seriousness of disease and the morbidity has increased with the variants. And so if you could speak to that, I think that would be important.
Absolutely. So factually, Tom's point was correct, but here's a little bit change in reality from that. The original virus correctly did not impact the youth of this country, as we saw the vast majority of individuals who died in the last year and a half were in fact older folks. That is changing as we speak. As you saw in those numbers, every single age group from 0 to 18 has increased significantly. The American Pediatric Association, the American Medical Association, the Colorado chapter of the American Pediatric Association, all fully support and endorse masking because they are the ones in the front line. Children's Hospital in Colorado has also put out a statement, absolutely abundantly clear. They fully support mask mandates because their hospital is rapidly filling. The number of pediatric intensive care unit beds we have in the state is less than 100 for the entire state and for portions of other states around us. So what they're trying to avoid is filling that up, because once it's full, we have nowhere to put the pediatric cases that we have. So what they're trying to do is prevent what is potentially to come as cases go up and as they are now seeing an increase in morbidity and mortality among the young. The Delta variant is affecting them unlike any prior variant before it. And what they're most concerned about is what is potentially to come. The next variant, with case levels the way that they are, not only in this state, but across the country, it is absolute breeding ground for another variant. This is how the other variants came about. When you have case counts so high and replication going at the way it is, another variant is potentially on the front, and it will affect the most vulnerable. And those right now are the unvaccinated, all of which under 12 are unvaccinated. So that's the primary concern. To date, have we had a lot of deaths? No. Do you want to wait until that happens for us to take action? The American Medical Association, American Pediatric Association say absolutely not. We do not want to wait. We want to take preventive measures now because we don't want to have that happen. On top of all of this, and I know I've said it at another meeting, the level of RSV in this country has gone up significantly in the last month and a half, way early. It's normally not until the winter that we see this. How is that relevant to this conversation? It gets back to the number of pediatric beds we have in this state, less than 100. So when you have RSV on top of COVID, it's the making of a perfect storm, and it's one that we're trying to absolutely avoid.
Okay. I think that's those are the ones that I had picked out earlier, George.
Okay.
So do you have other stuff you'd like to?
I've got a couple in that were in this email from the Dunbars. So Tim, can you share your thoughts on why we're only testing the unvaccinated teachers and not all of them?
We're testing the unvaccinated teachers because they present the highest risk to the school. As Karen stated, they have a number of vaccinated staff who have already come forward saying we would love to get tested weekly. And so it will not just be unvaccinated, but the number of unvaccinated staff is low. And so the number of actual staff they're going to be testing isn't a great number. But from a scientific perspective, they present more than three times the risk that the vaccinated staff do. And so from that perspective and the sheer logistics perspective, that's the group we're starting with, or our testing.
Thank you. And then we know, do we know what type of tests are being performed in terms of, I know they're PCR tests. Do we know if they're cheek swab, nasal swab, or the other one?
Absolutely. So we have two different companies that we're using. The elementary schools, King, Murphy, Carlson, and Georgetown, if this in fact public health order goes forward, are used through COVID Check Colorado, the one that we're using for the community testing. Another question was asked, how quickly are test results gotten back? 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but typically it's about 2 days time. In the middle school, high school, we're using a federal program. And that program similarly is a PCR test. It is a self-administered nasal swab. You take the swab and you go around your nose several times, stick it in the tube, and that's it. These tests are 90+% accurate. Are there sometimes false positives? Absolutely. That's true with any test. There's also false negatives, but those numbers in a PCR test with these two different companies are very low, and probably the most accurate test that we could do with the resources we have. And just as a point of clarification, neither the county nor public health nor the school district are receiving a dime for any test done by anybody. These tests are done, and the state is paying the company independent of us, and the federal government is also paying for the testing at the middle school, high school. We have nothing to do with that other than logistically on the ground, trying to make sure that it happens smoothly and effectively for those who want to get tested.
Okay, thank you. And then I think this question maybe is best for Karen. Have you put thought into how you will be able to perform these tests without folks discovering who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated?
Yeah, and that's something that our nurses, along with the principals, will be working through next week. We're kind of looking at, if again this passes, next week being a learning week, and absolutely one of the norms is that if someone wants private or confidential testing, we'll offer that for either adults or kids. And really just talk to folks as we're going through it, thinking about where the most comfortable places for testing. I know when we did it, because we actually offered testing at the middle school, high school last year. And it was, for the adults, we offered it to kids with parent permission. But it was in the library before school because that's what folks wanted. So we'll work with employees and kids to see what's comfortable for them. We want to make absolutely sure that we aren't making anyone feel uncomfortable or singled out or anything like that. And in terms of the employees, again, because we're at such a high vaccination rate, we very few, especially in classrooms, for example. So I don't anticipate the logistics will be tricky. We've been working with our employees all along the way. And I will say too, some of them have really, really good solid reasons for not being vaccinated, health reasons. And so we've been working with them along the way in terms of how can this play out in a private, comfortable way. So that's important to us. We're not looking to make anyone feel uncomfortable. If you go back and read any of the communications that I've put out, especially to employees, it's been, we treat everyone, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, with kindness and respect, and we don't judge. And so, this adds another layer of eek, how will we do that? But I feel like our educators especially have been thoughtful about that. So, and I also, I know I need to get some more information out to the community around the additions that we're doing to our HVAC system. I want to be careful I don't misspeak on the types that we are installing at the middle high school, because we do have rooftop units. We just went after a grant and we've got some funding already that we're using to do those. And we're putting air purifiers into classrooms. I'll get a status update on that from our director of facilities and get that out in our next update, because we've been working on that as well.
I think this subject just brought up one of the primary reasons for the mandatory testing is for the extracurricular activities with travel or intermingling with, and I think it's one of the primary reasons that we have that we should make this change that says that both vaccinated and unvaccinated are tested, because that's where the privacy breaks down, is when certain kids have to be tested and others don't. Then it's a small it's a small community, and so it's a good way to protect within that school community that level of privacy. Everyone's tested, and then the test results are private back to the individual, and would take care of that. There was something, the funding issue came up in another item in here again, and the CARES money issue was brought up as though COVID is some kind of a racket for us. And I just want to say something right now. This guy that on my screen is to the right of me, and myself have both been working somewhere around 60 to 80 hours a week for the last year and a half. And we don't get paid any extra for any of that. And CARES funding is only distributed for demonstrated costs that we incur dealing with the COVID virus. For example, we tripled or quadrupled the size of our public health department in order to try to keep Clear Creek safe. And the cost associated with that and many other things that we've had to do in the county have to be demonstrated with receipts to the federal government to pay only for additional cost. There's not a penny of graft or a penny of corruption in this. So for everyone who has stated that, for everyone who's thrown it into the chat, I just want you to know that that's the case. There's an extra penny coming in anybody's pocket for anything, and the county isn't funding itself off of COVID. We'll never be able to recover all of the costs, just like the business community can't recover all of those costs. But we've gone out and fought and spent a lot of time. George has been the primary person on that, bringing in everything he can to try to help those businesses that have been hurt and get every penny that we can. But none of it comes to the county as extra money over and above to fund us. So I would like for everybody to just kind of like scratch that off your things to be worried about. And sorry if that was there's a little off topic here, but I just have seen it show up enough times that I want to be extremely clear about it.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that, Randy, while we're on this topic. Another thing that I've seen that's a little disturbing in some of these comments to me is the idea that we're trying to test a lot to have high case numbers to perpetuate the pandemic. I can assure you that nobody on this screen wants to continue to be having these conversations. Nobody. And I've heard comments about the public health director wanting to be important. And I want to assure everybody that that role is crucially important to our community every single day. And frankly, when we are not dealing with the pandemic, we'll be able to get back to work that is very important in public health. And so I just want to, my expectation is that the person on this screen in this community who most wants to get back to all of the other exciting public health efforts is Dr. Tim Ryan. So I just wanted to say that as well. Moving on to, we address one of these questions is about athletes and how they would be tested. We addressed that. Another question was assuming that unvaccinated students are next on the list for mandatory testing, how would that play out? Can't really speculate on that right now. I don't think anybody has an intent to expand mandatory testing to every student. I think that would be really challenging to pull off just from a systems perspective. And if we were to propose something like that, it would result in a conversation like this. So just throw that out there. Turnaround on tests was handled. Why, the last one, I think, why are we no longer checking temperatures?
Well, a number of reasons. One, we can't do everything. So we have adopted a number of different protocols this year, some of which we did last year and some of which we did not. Last year, taking temperatures on a daily basis didn't net us a lot of cases or a lot of symptomatic individuals. So it's a lot, logistically, it's a lot of ask for schools to temperature check every single kid. You know, if that is of interest of parents, perhaps they should temperature check their child before they go to school. Because logistically at the school, it is quite challenging to test several hundred kids at the middle school, high school, just as an example, prior to the start of school. So that was one of the ones that we decided the cost benefit, is it really worth it? How many kids did we actually identify last year with the temperature checking, and how much effort does it actually take?
Thank you. And then lastly, do you have any, well, actually we have established that the school district is working on air quality. So I think that question's been answered. Seeing one other one, I think this one is most appropriately answered by Randy or I. Would we consider putting out a survey before making this decision? I will state that I know Magellan Strategies put out a poll statewide of parents, and it's about a dead split of parents and their opinions on this. I did see that there is an enthusiasm advantage on the side of people who don't want face masks, which is, you know, evident in this room as well. So for just speaking for myself, I don't think that a local survey is necessary to make this decision.
No, I don't either. I think it's clear that more of the people showed up tonight that don't want this to do, and we can acknowledge that right now without taking the survey. Virtually all of our comments were against, and I realize that. That's not uncommon when we have issues which are unpopular with the segment of the population, that the people that are most upset show up and the others don't, and that's just a fact of life. That's the way it almost always works in these situations. But I acknowledge that if we took a poll tonight, it would be about, you know, at least probably 9-1, 8-2 to 9-1 against, you know, and I can see that right now based on what I've heard. So that said, I think I don't need to, so I don't need to see the need to take that poll to know that.
Yeah, maybe the only other thing I'll add is that we have been making public health orders and making modifications to public health orders going back about 1.5 years. We did do a survey on a face mask, the initial face mask order. And I know I spend a lot of time talking in the community, reading comments on Facebook, trying to understand where people are at. Are there any other questions that anybody saw in the chat? Brian, I think you may have some that you saw that could be asked or haven't been answered.
Yeah, Karen spoke to the issue of, you know, the vaccine, those who are vaccinated, unvaccinated, keeping that as private as possible. To the extent that the protocols start to identify who's vaccinated and who's not, are we creating any medical privacy issues by that fact?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And we, again, if anyone wants a private testing place, they absolutely can. Testing doesn't indicate a vaccination status. Again, it's offered to everyone, but only required for the unvaccinated employees. And they can absolutely ask us ahead of time for a private location to test where no one else would know. So we've been pretty careful about that. We actually put a survey out the beginning of the year to get a sense of our vaccination status. And have been really careful about a needs to know basis. Who gets that information? A person's supervisor has a needs to know in terms of working with that person and making sure that they're following all of the protocols. And then our nurse who is working on this is a needs to know as well. So, and then if in the event of a quarantine or what have you, vaccination status factors into that. So that's where our nurses work with CCPH on that.
I would just add to that, the public health order doesn't dictate where individuals get tested. It just needs to be a PCR test. So as an example, they can go to the free public testing sites that we have available. And just for the record, we now have 3 days that'll be testing here in Clear Creek County. We did some arm twisting and now have 2 days in Idaho Springs and 1 day in Georgetown where COVID Check Colorado will be available for extended hours in 3 days. So they can go there as well and get tested in the privacy of their own car, and nobody knows.
Dr. Ryan, are there HIPAA issues around identifying who's vaccinated and who's not?
In relation to what?
Whether it becomes obvious who's vaccinated or not based on enforcing the protocols of this order.
No, so as an example, if you're talking about the handful of staff who are in the school district who are unvaccinated, them testing, again, they have multiple options of testing. If Karen tells people who's unvaccinated, that is a HIPAA violation, but that, someone else telling them or them telling other people, then it's public knowledge if they openly tell people they're unvaccinated or vaccinated. It is not a HIPAA violation. It is not also a HIPAA violation for Karen as the employer to ask employees any more than it is for you to ask the county employees what they're of their vaccine status, because it is directly related to being able to function in their job and whether they're going to be out or not. So it is directly related.
And then the only other question I captured was, is there a time period for this order? In other words, is there an end date?
Well, we thought we were in pretty good shape about 6 months ago, but here we are. So at this point, I don't know that I would put an end date on it. Do I want this to go on ad infinitum? I do not. Somebody commented about how tired they are wearing a mask. Include me on that list. I don't want us to wear masks any longer than I think it would be prevented and helpful. And I've been misquoted several times in the chat about the effectiveness of masks. What I did say is that masks range from very ineffective in the form of a gaiter all the way to a 95%, a KN95, which is 95% effective. And so there's a wide range in the effectiveness of masks. And so are they all 100% or 95% effective? Absolutely not. But this doesn't dictate that they have to wear an N95 mask. So
there's some help. My understanding is that the standard, I'll call them homegrown masks, grassroots masks, will stop the larger droplets from the sneezes and stuff like that. They're not as effective at preventing the aerosolization of the actual viral molecules, which can, contrary from all the research I've seen in the last year and a half, contrary to a statement that was in the chat earlier, can be aerosolized and float in the air for up to 3 hours. And you can find a wheelbarrow load of studies that will show that. And I first learned it from my cousin who was working in a hospital in Greeley, which at that time had more cases and deaths happening than anywhere in the state over a year ago. And he explained aerosolization to me. And so the first thing I thought of as a builder, and this will kind of go to answer a little bit about some of the other things. We've looked into a lot of things, the UV treatment in the AC systems or the air handling systems is a potential thing, but we also looked at, you can change the size, the MERV filters in there to a finer particulate, but they have to go to such a fine particulate rating that usually it means putting in a whole new air handling system, because the existing motors in the system and the size of the ductwork, the way it's built, can't overcome that. They're designed to handle that one size MERV filter. So there's trade-offs in that. With regard also to the subject, some questions about, why aren't we doing other things instead of this? It's kind of like we do the laundry and we do the dishes and we mow the lawn. We're trying to do everything we can to keep people safe. Yes, we have done everything from closing roads to closing businesses to providing testing for employees at businesses, have sent testing to the businesses over the last year at different times in similar efforts. And no one's saying that can't happen again during this current wave, this current spike. We'll have to see what happens. This is just a place we're going now because we know from Dr. Ryan, from others that have told us in CDPHE that the particular strains that are out there now are having a greater effect on children. And that's with the number of unvaccinated children that we have, that's troubling. And so we're trying to figure out the best things we can do to keep everyone safe. And of course, there's going to be, and there obviously is, a lot of disagreement about that.
Okay, so I want to ask a question. I want to put voice to a question. This one's to you, Peter. And I realize you can't answer this question with any certainty. That would be up to the courts. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on who would hold liability if there's any harm done by a mask or a test in the school?
So if the public health order is legitimately passed, meaning it serves a legitimate interest for the government to protect the health and safety of students, citizens, the liability there is extremely low. First of all, as a government entity, we have the right to engage certain things, our police powers essentially for public safety. We also have governmental immunity. So there's limited liability to no liability for this type of act on behalf of the board or Dr. Ryan personally or as a public official. And the idea that you would trace what is a uniformly applied mandate to some sort of liability or illness, I think that would be very hard for somebody to establish in a court of law. So from a liability standpoint, that would not be a reason not to follow through with this order. If I thought that we were inviting any type of liability by the Board of Health approving this order, I would not be recommending that we approve the order. Or I would have language in there that would address any potential liability. And I don't believe that the school district is liable either, but I cannot advise them. They have their own independent counsel, and I'm sure they've consulted with their counsel on exactly these type of procedures.
Thank you for that, Peter. Okay, so are there any other questions that haven't been answered? Or Randy, are we ready to discuss our opinions on this?
Before you do that, if I could just recap briefly what I see in the changes that we have suggested. And I also want to make sure that that we're very clear. George, you had mentioned that we are not requiring unvaccinated students to be tested. That is true, unless, of course, they are participating in extracurricular activities as we define them. And that would apply to all students, though, now. And I'm not sure if the agenda backup that's there, if we have the latest version of the resolution in the online version or not. Beth, are you able to confirm whether or not we do have the latest one? Regardless, I'm going to share my screen. We do. I'm going to share my screen and we can just go through this if we could go through the changes so you actually can see them. All right. Can you see my screen now? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to the top of the resolution just to start to reflect the changes. And I want to make sure if there were any outstanding questions that are addressed. Obviously, I've changed the title in the resolution to reflect specifically that we are going to be seeking regular testing for unvaccinated faculty and staff in pre-K through grade 12 in school and childcare settings, and all students and adults participating in certain extracurricular activities. Extra space there, which I defined further down in the order. These changes that you see here also reflect that we are changing from unvaccinated students in the extracurricular activities to all students and adults in those certain school-based extracurricular activities. There are no changes in the rest of this language and none necessary based on the discussion of the board. I believe that at some point, board members may have had questions throughout the week when they've looked at the draft, and they've communicated with Dr. Ryan about any specifics. I want to make sure that there are no outstanding questions from any of the board members regarding the implementation and the guidance. And also what I put here is the change that we discussed. I understood from Dr. Ryan, he would like to see twice weekly testing as opposed to language that said at least weekly testing. So I made that change here where my cursor is, as well as down here, twice weekly throughout the 2021-2022 school year. I also would like to point out the reason there is no expiration on this particular Board of Health resolution is because typically we've been doing these 90 days and reviewing them. This is something that intends to span the entire school year. And so if the board feels the need to come back and decide they want to rescind this resolution, they can do so at any time. But to automatically expire at 90 days made no sense because we are looking at the full school year. And it is anticipating it's anticipated based on all the science that is out there, the information that Dr. Ryan has appropriately brought to everyone's attention, and I believe very accurately brought to our attention. We are looking at likely an increase in the spread of COVID-19, at least through the first of the year, if not beyond that. So that is why there's no expiration. But hopefully this language here where I've put, it's all students and adults participating in school-based extracurricular activities that involve travel or intermingling with students and adults from schools outside of Clear Creek County, that they should be tested twice weekly. And then any other change was down here. This is under the exceptions part, where the mask requirement and the testing doesn't apply. And that's only in these situations. It's actually the masking requirement, excuse me. And that's individuals seated within pods during meal and snack time who are actively eating or drinking. However, individuals within pods should still practice physical distancing, and individual pods must be spaced at least 6 feet apart during meal and snack time, where these activities must occur outdoors. Again, this is for Dr. Ryan's review as well. If he thinks, hopefully that captures what he was looking for. And then there was no other change that was needed other than the date of the resolution. So that's all the changes I've made. And I will unshare my screen now.
Can you roll? Oh, okay, never mind.
I can go back. No, go right
It
ahead.
wasn't important. I was going to ask to see the actual wording around the pods, but I'm not too.
It's not a problem. It's easy to share. Back up.
Back down just a little there. Yeah.
And it's right there.
Now the individual, there's not a specification to how far the individuals within the pods would practice physical distancing. And so without a specification, I'm wondering what its impact really is.
I'll defer to Dr. Ryan whether he wants to put an amount. I was about to put 3 feet, but then I thought, I'm not really sure how those pods are functioning. And I'm sure Karen and Dr. Ryan could provide input.
Yeah, if it's not going to have a specific distance, I don't know if it's worth even mentioning, to be honest. I mean, other than encouragement to physically distance maybe as far as possible within their pod.
Right. And I think the goal is to really limit, like if someone has a COVID positive, I believe it's around trying to limit the quarantines,
Right.
Because it's, all the factors come into place. And so obviously when they're eating, there's a bigger risk because they don't have masks on. But I don't know that I want a physical distance within those pods. I don't know that we'd have the space to do that. And I don't know that that's realistic. I think in between the pods, that makes a heck of a lot more sense.
Okay.
So if that works for everybody, then
So I think, yeah, it's fine the way it is then. I think it accomplishes that. They should still practice physical distancing, which means do the best you can.
is that, okay, is that what, I didn't understand that. I
Okay,
just
which,
wanna make-
what do you think? I'm sorry. Anyone else?
I think I agree with you. I think leaving it in just like that is an encouragement that they practice the distancing that they can find.
Yeah, and leaving some on the ground, obviously monitoring at the schools to keep track of that. I mean, putting in a specific distance within a pod, you know, sometimes they go outside and they're much further than 3 feet apart. Sometimes inside it's limited by the space in which they have. So trying to leave a little bit of leeway for the principal and others staff there to sort of monitor that reality on the ground.
You might add the words after distancing to the extent possible. Just, you know, so I can monkey with something.
No, that's fine. What I was trying to do was not have an incredibly long run-on sentence.
Right,
So
that's
I will
my
work that, but I that's no problem. I can do that while you all are considering other aspects. That's fine.
George is laughing because he knows that I specialize in incredibly long sentences.
Can neither confirm nor deny that that was on my mind. Okay, so we have had, can we just look at the section of this that talks about how people opt out?
Opt out from
the mask order.
I don't know that we have a specific opt-out provision.
I mean, opt out isn't the right language, but I remember reading something about where you have a doctor's note and the school confirms.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So
under exceptions or exemptions. Under
exactly.
exemptions.
And it's B is what I think you're referring to.
Yeah. I just wanted everybody to put their eyes on this and make sure that they're okay with this process.
Yeah, and just as a point of clarification, it reverts back to the school district process that they have in place for any medical condition that exists among students, and the 3 different avenues that they already have in place for entertaining those sorts of things.
Okay.
And go ahead. Sorry, John.
Oh, I was just going to state that there is a comment in here that there's not a whole lot described in this public health order about the school district's process. And I think that's appropriate. I think it's appropriate that the school district, you know, be able to create forms and innovate processes to make this as easy as everybody, or as easy as possible for everybody. So I don't think I'm requesting any change there.
No, I wouldn't. I think it's for the same reason. I think they need to engineer accomplishing. It's up to the school to engineer accomplishing compliance with the pretty obvious stated intent within the order.
Yeah.
Just a quick question around that, thinking about Georgetown, how we've got it worded for B. That I just want to make sure Georgetown's voice is heard with that too. And I know there's comments around masks and accommodations and agreement and disagreement about what we've outlined. We are using the existing processes that are on that sheet. And I know some people are okay with it and others are not. I acknowledge that. But I just wanted to elevate that, make sure that that covers Georgetown as well. And yeah, that's all I'll say on it.
As well as
so
settings.
So when I developed our process, when we posted, you know, we did that as a board and we received legal consultation on that. And the sheet that is posted on our website, that's called mask accommodations. That's really intended to be for our, King Murphy, Carlson, CCMS, HS schools, because that's really what our board governs. Georgetown being a charter school, they're governed by their board. And so I just want to make sure I'm not speaking for them. I don't mean to open up a whole can of worms or a whole debate, but again, I want to make sure that they're heard with that and that acknowledges what helps. And we maybe have different perspectives on what a mask accommodation would require. We absolutely are asking for a clinical diagnosis, and we're not trying to be blockers of it, but we believe if we're going to have masks, the instances where someone wouldn't wear a mask would be rare and very much based on a clinical diagnosis. So I just wanted to put that out there, that our process acknowledges that.
So I think we can adjust that by either by changing Clear Creek School District to confirmed by the school or childcare setting. But I defer to Tim as to whether he thinks this is something that public health should somehow be involved in, or just, like make it generic, if that might be better. This was language I know Tim had added specifically just so it was clear, because what we didn't want is a random kind of generalized doctor's note that just said, my child, such child should not be wearing a mask, period.
Right. And again, we really sought legal opinion on that because we've got legalities on both sides of it, even though parents might have one perspective. Like, I very much want to opt my kiddo out and I want to submit a doctor's note. We've got legalities on the flip side of it. If that impacts other folks and there's not a clinical diagnosis and suddenly we're in remote learning. So we had to look at it from both perspectives, as painful as that may be.
And from my perspective, the school district is the one with the legal authority to determine whether someone can or cannot do something in their school. And in consultation with Karen and their legal team as well, I would defer to that. They have the processes in place. There's absolutely no reason to change it or create a new one, because the one that's there has worked. And it's not my wheelhouse to tell the school district what they can and cannot do in terms of exemptions or not. So I would leave it as it is or just take it out, because the school district is already addressing those issues on a personal basis.
So for applying this order, though, to entities other than, or that I'll use the Georgetown School as an example, it has its own Board of Education. And therefore, I don't know that from a legal perspective, I don't know that it's considered part of the school district, even though it's a charter school. So that's what I'm asking. Maybe should we just say the school or childcare, or just keep it as individuals who cannot medically tolerate a face covering? How would you like to see that? That's the only thing I just want to clarify. Is that what we're trying to figure out?
Maybe it makes sense to me, Peter, to just say based on a clinical diagnosis.
Okay.
I don't know if others have different opinions, but that gets away from trying to figure out how to define all these different entities.
Yeah, I because we do have different, we're talking about schools primarily here, but it's important that you bring up childcare centers, and we're trying to get childcare. We've been working on bringing childcare to the county as well. It can easily be happening within this time frame that we're talking about. And so I do think it should be confirmed. I think the clinical diagnosis should be received and confirmed by someone to validate. The question is whom. And I don't think I'm adding. I don't think I'm removing any confusion from the question. I haven't answered it. But
what about individuals who provide a clinical diagnosis? Does that help with the concern you're talking about?
I think that question is for Tim. I think it satisfies, I think the way it is does just removing, as you suggested, reviewed and confirmed by Clear Creek School District.
So as it's written right now with the red line through it, it does what it should do. It defaults to the school in which that child is enrolled, and it's the determination of that school. In 3 or 4 of the schools, it's the Clear Creek School District, and one of them is the Georgetown School Board, who makes that determination. So I think as it's written from a legal perspective, it's generic enough to default back to the entity in which that child is enrolled.
And George, I thought you had a question about clarifying whether a person who has symptoms of any illness can choose to quarantine or must take a test to return. And I don't know if you had already discussed that with Tim at some other point offline. That was referenced in 3A12. Right here. I thought you had had a question for Tim regarding that.
Oh, yeah, and for some reason in my head, I thought it had been handled. I just noticed that section 3 provides for quarantine times and section 2 does not. And I wonder if we want to provide for quarantine times in section 2.
I don't even know that we need to complicate things. The quarantine and isolation time is determined by literally public health nurses. It's dependent on a whole host of variables.
Right.
So mandating it in a legal document, I don't know if that's necessary, because it's part of the state statute and the nurses authority.
Right, because there's so many variables, as you said, as to how long a person should quarantine. And sometimes you're isolated until you have your test results, and they may come back quickly or not. And it's you want to have the freedom to be able to end it as soon as you really can, like we'd all like to see all this end. But in each case.
So, Tim, are you therefore recommending that the quarantine periods be pulled from item 3 so that item 3 looks like item 2?
Yes, I would, for reasons I just stated, that it's case dependent. It's the conversation that happens between cases and the nursing staff.
Okay. And then what do you think about on both of the items, adding in something that allows for quarantine? So present a negative test or quarantine a sufficient amount of time or something like that.
Yeah, I would just say, wordsmithing at 6:30 at night. I would say, per conversation with public health. Right to my point, I don't want to prescribe something in this document that people continue to point to and say, no, the public health order says I only have to do 10 days, or I can get out after 7 days.
So why don't we start with what, Tim, you would like to take out?
Okay.
So if I'm looking at I3, which portion, where should this portion stop that you want out?
Just taking a stab at it, I suggest a period after facility and you remove the rest of the language.
Yes, perfect.
And including, okay. Gotcha.
I know your meetings.
And then would you add into both of these, present a negative test result, and then after the word result, or quarantine?
And just general or quarantine before being allowed to return?
Yeah, I mean, again, it gets back to the exposure, it gets back to the vaccine status, it gets back to a whole host of issues or variables.
Quarantine for an amount of time required by CCPEA.
Yes.
Thanks to everybody enduring this. Couple of revisions here.
And then add that same language to the next one as well. Oh man.
And while you're doing that, Peter, I'll respond to a question in the chat with regards to whether we have a quorum. We do have a quorum of the Board of County Commissioners. The board is 3 commissioners. There are 2 present. That's a quorum. The members of the boards of health that are on the screen are Randy Wheelock and George Marlin. Okay, any other comments or edits on this resolution? Okay, I don't see any. I know I've read through it carefully, well, 2.5 times now.
May I stop the share?
Yep.
I believe so. Okay. So we're at time for deliberation to express our opinions and see where we land. Randy, would you like to start, or would you like me to?
We could draw straws, but I'll just start. I'll just go ahead and pull the short straw and be very brief. I do support the resolution. It doesn't make me any happier to do it than it does anybody else to have it done. But I think it's the right thing to do at this point in time. We have made numerous decisions throughout the last 1.5 years that were very similar to this and just as controversial with regard to businesses and roads and all kinds of things. And we have done everything we can to try to provide everything from PPEs to vaccines to early on when we only had 14 test kits in the county for the period of the first month to month and a half, and had to start screaming at the state to bring us more. I don't know what else to say. I guess I'm trying to say that we do care and we are trying to do the right thing. And I would prefer, based on the things I learned over the last 1.5 years, by hanging out with a few people that are also, and I know we have everybody here, all of our visitors also have researched hard and they care a lot. And they have friends and family that are medical practitioners that have talked to them and given them opinions as well. But the things that I've heard, and from the things that I've seen in recent statistics, and from what I've heard from Dr. Ryan, whom I do completely trust as being honest and professional about this, is that we should move forward with this at this time. And hopefully we will be able to end it before the school year is out. But I have no tremendous confidence that that will happen based on the trajectory we're seeing right now. Time will tell. But I'm in support of it.
Thank you. I'm in support of this public health order as well. The policy goals that we've stated as a board many times apply here. Those policy goals are to make sure there's an ICU bed and ventilator that's available to save the life of a person who needs one when they need it, including kids. To make sure that folks find out when they've been in contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID. And to reduce the risk of further mutation of the virus by keeping the case rate low. Specifically, I think that those are the goals, the 3 goals that we've been discussing for this last year and a half. Specifically on this public health order, I think that we have a clear ability to change our outcomes through unilateral county action, which is different than the scenario of a county-wide mask order, where we would be, I don't even have to talk about a county-wide mask order. I also think it's important to avoid interruptions in the school's year and student schedules. And I heard the superintendent say that, and I agree wholeheartedly. We've got to give the school system as good a chance as we can to keep the school year going. And I don't think I'm hearing from anybody that if we do this, we can guarantee the schools will stay open. I think conversely, we can guarantee the schools will not get a full school year if we don't do this. What we're doing is giving a chance for our students to have a school year. And what we're really doing here, we're not requiring anyone to do anything. We are clarifying the choices that people have. And we are providing safe options for those who want them. And so for those reasons, I am in favor of this.
And before you take a motion, I just have a question or a clarification for Tim. Tim, under section 3 of the school and child care guidance, there is I guess it's 3I or 1, 2, there are 3 I's on, looks like it's page 5 of the resolution, where it talks about unvaccinated individuals who are unmasked at the time of their exposure are required to quarantine. I'll share the screen again just so you all know what I'm referring to. I just want to make sure we're not looking at a potential conflict. So we've removed the specified amount of days from these sections. But down here, it looks like those days are back in. And so I want to make sure that I'm not saddling you there.
No, George, you're not, George. Peter, I think we can take that out as well. To my point earlier, that is a conversation that happens between cases, close contacts, and the nursing staff. So I don't think it needs to be included.
Okay, so I'll make that change as well, so that it makes sense with the. Well, I guess we could take out those sections completely. Or just stop it at. Just get rid of this part.
Yeah, we can.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do the same thing for here.
Same for there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Good catch.
Okay. All right, and I will unstop share. Okay, thank you.
I think I'd like to just extend my comment a little because George said a couple of things that kind of triggered me. Any good, not triggered me at George, but a lot of COVID does not have a brain. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that happens in nature. And so it's not sneakily trying to find a way around the vaccines. It doesn't hold a special hidden meeting to find out, or it doesn't try to figure out and intelligently decide how to get around the vaccines and mutate. But the more opportunities it has to do that by continuing to spread, it's just every time there's a COVID case, it's another roll of the dice and another opportunity for mutation, as I've had it explained to me by many others. And so a lot of what we're trying to do and control the number of cases that are happening is control the number of random chances that COVID has to eventually mutate into a form much dangerous than anything we've seen yet. And so it's a global effort to control this thing and have it not come to a more serious consequence for all of us. And the other one is that I also agree, based on what we saw last year and what we're seeing this year, especially with children being more vulnerable to the newer strains, more likely to acquire them, that this is probably the best way to keep our schools open. And I know that from having had my own grandson choose the virtual version of school last year, the online version, and know that how desperate he was to be back in school and that we want our schools open. And so that's our real intent. Control the spread of COVID in our community, contribute to a communal solution to solving the problem in the larger scale, and having our schools open with our kids in them and learning in that environment. Because I know, having talked to Karen can confirm this, I think from a conversation that we had, I said, you know, our learning opportunities were limited last year. Certainly the online version of school wasn't as good as the year before and the year before that and the year before that. And I talked to her and worried that my grandson had, you know, lost out because of that. And it was our choice. It was our family choice to do that. And she said, well, they were compromised all the way around in the school too, with having to move into school and out of the school, you know, being open and closed and open and closed again. So it's important that we try as hard as we can to not be opened and closed in the school and further compromise that. And yeah, it's hard, but it's nobody's agenda to create control or anything like that. It's really just an effort to persevere as we did last year through a time in which COVID did kill about 14 times as many people as all the car fatalities in the US every year, many, many more times than the flu normally does in a year when the flu was down, probably because we were masking and socially distancing and all those things. And so I see this as a measure to keep our kids in schools the best way we can. And is it a compromised situation? Of course it is. Do I like it? No, not a bit. But I just think it's like a lot of other things like we faced 100 years ago with a similar disease while there was a world war going on and through a lot of other trials, and we just have to get through it. And so we just do the work we can to get through it, and this is part of it. And with that, I think I'd like to make a motion, if you're ready, George, that we approve Clear Creek County Board of Health Resolution 21-05 as amended in the last screenshot that we saw. Looking for a second.
Oh, okay. I'll second that motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Any final words from anyone?
I got mine.
I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their evening to come and share of themselves with us. It really does help. Even when you don't agree with what we're doing, you help us make it better. I think we saw that happen tonight in real time. So I want to thank you all for your participation. I want to thank staff for their time here. I want to thank Karen Kwanbeck for taking the time here as well. Have a great night, everyone. We are adjourned.
Wait,
Sorry.
we have
Wait, no,
another
we have
thing on the
another thing.
agenda.
We're not adjourned.
I just texted my wife and said it's not over yet. We got more to go.
Thank you. We are not adjourned. The next item, let me pull this up on my agenda. The next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of resolution number 21-63, a resolution describing a proposal for increasing the countywide sales tax rate by 1% from 1.65 to 2.65% for the purpose of improving the safety of roads and bridges in the county by funding increased maintenance and repairs of those roads and bridges, with 25% of the revenue from that tax increase being shared back to the incorporated municipalities in the county for that purpose, and providing for other matters related to the proposal. So the way we're going to do this, pretty similar to the way that we did the public health order. We're going to have a presentation from staff. We'll open it up for public comment for anyone who wishes to make comment, and then we'll deliberate. And I'm doing that because we didn't do the all topics public comment at the beginning of the meeting. So Peter, are you starting us off, or Stoy, are you?
Yes, I can go through it as well. So, and we do have Carl Shell and Stoy Streepy here from our Public Works Department, and to go through it as well. As the board knows, when we last discussed this, probably at our last public meeting, there is a significant shortfall in the budget for road and bridge improvements, including maintenance and repair of those roads. So the board before you is a resolution that would allow for and authorize a ballot measure to be placed on the November ballot for the next election, which is coming up soon, a couple months, and to approve a 1% increase in the sales tax. And the resolution itself, the way we worded it, it has to be noticed in a certain way for Tabor, which is the constitutional provision that requires notice of what this increase would necessarily mean in a monetary from a monetary standpoint initially the first year, and also as limitations, of course, on the funds that a municipality or a county may take in certain circumstances based on taxes. So just to go through, we have our typical whereas clauses, which give a lot of the background for why we're even coming to the public with this concern. And what this ballot initiative would end up calling for is just a 1% increase on the sale of retail and tangible personal property in the county. So basically, the county currently has a 1.65% sales tax. It applies to everything. There's no exemptions to our sales tax. The first part of that, the 1%, was in 1975. And then in 2017, the public passed and approved another 0.65% sales tax for EMS, basically our public safety. It's a public safety tax. Now we need, at a minimum, to be frank, this 1% increase to the sales tax in order to establish and maintain the bare minimum, I think, of road safety in the county. Specifically, there are a number of projects where maintenance is falling behind because we don't have the funding. There's repair of roads that's necessary. This isn't just to actually build roads. This isn't aspirational. This is what is needed. The board thought that it would make sense to at least share back a portion of that 1% sales tax with the municipalities within the county so that they could use that 25% portion for their own roads and bridges. To the extent they're not county roads and bridges, they can use that for the same purpose of maintenance and repair of their roads. So it really, for the county, means about a 0.75% increase. For the municipalities, they get a proportion of the remaining 25%. And then I basically, what you're seeing, well, you don't have it in front of you, but what's part of the agenda, what's the resolution itself has the ballot language. And essentially it specifies that 1%. It estimates right now that that 1% would bring in approximately $1.8 million in the first fiscal year. It would raise the countywide sales tax from 1.65% to 2.65%, but it would address the ongoing issues with road maintenance and with our bridges and repairs of that. Pretty much that's the overview. The way that we will calculate the 25% that will go back to the individual municipalities will be the same way that the Department of Revenue calculates our highway user tax, which is based on the mill levy that already exists. So it'll be proportional. It'll relate to the amount of road miles within a municipality. It'll relate to the amount of car registrations, truck vehicle registrations within that county as well. And there's a proportion, there's a methodology that they have for that. Any other questions right now?
Excuse me. No questions yet.
So I would probably, yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to note to everyone here that we are not passing a sales tax tonight. What we're doing is passing a resolution to put something on the ballot so the voters can decide whether or not to try to raise the funds to do this. So I just want to make that really clear distinction, because I saw a couple things in chat and I just want to make sure that everybody understood that we don't pass a tax here. We can't do that under table. That's why it has to go to the ballot. So.
Okay, thank you. So who's next? Is it Carl or Stoy or?
Was Peter done? Did I interrupt him?
Nope. I was done going over what's before you for consideration. We do have to certify this to the clerk and recorder tomorrow, by the end of the day tomorrow, so that it can actually make the ballot. And that's why we're having this discussion at this point.
Thank you, Carl.
Yes, George, and thanks again for the time this evening. We did not prepare another presentation on top of what we have already brought before you. But the discussion tonight, I think, was to make sure we come to a consensus on where exactly we are with the numbers and what that tax increase should be, and also the appropriations that we have recommended as far as how those funds are shared back to the municipalities. And I think just with the discussions we've had between meetings, that most of that information is in this resolution, as we would like to recommend it to you. But I would also like to open that up to Stoy and or Peter or Brian to add any more, just with the discussions that took place this week between staff and between the commissioners as well.
If I might, I think we're bringing an important decision to both the board tonight. I think as well as our community ultimately, if what we're recommending tonight passes. You know, that we're talking about funding infrastructure. You know, some of the basic needs of the county that then impact our residents, that impact our other departments, that impact our public safety's ability to access our neighborhoods, et cetera. So I think this really speaks to the heart of the mission of parts of why the county exists, right? In terms of funding our infrastructure and funding the quality nature of the county itself. So again, I think it speaks to the heart of part of our mission of our county.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that we have been through a fairly
extensive analysis of our road system and our needs, and presented that stuff to this board previously, and happy to answer any questions that you have in regard to that. But would certainly agree that this is something that through the analysis and the feedback we polled residents the best we could. We got a really good response from the polling that we did, and a positive response from them, with them confirming that this is something that's needed, that the county continues to need to maintain our infrastructure here, and that's important to the residents. We can see that through the polling, through our analysis, and through the comments that we get on a daily and weekly basis from the residents that have concerns about the roads and the drainage system associated with the roads there.
Thank you. And I agree with what's been said. We've been evaluating this for about a year. Every couple of months, we bring that spreadsheet back up and torture the numbers some more to make sure we've got the right rate. One thing that I think we need to address is that this resolution does not provide for exemption of food sales. In the survey that went out, we did state that food sales would be exempted. And Peter, actually, rather than try to explain what you explained to me, will you just explain to everyone the complexities associated with exempting food from a sales tax proposal when you don't have exemptions on your existing sales taxes?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I know this was something that the board looked at individually when I was speaking to each individual member, how important it was to consider adding in an exemption, both for example, food for home consumption or any other exemptions that a county actually has to actively put into a resolution in order for the exemption to exist. It's not automatic like it is with certain state measures. So in reviewing that, the original thought was, well, perhaps we could add an exemption in for this 1% sales tax. However, that 1% sales tax cannot just be separately exempted out. The Department of Revenue is very clear that you cannot, what they call, split an exemption. And what that essentially means is that right now we have a 1.65% sales tax, no exemptions. If we added this 1%, but we wanted to apply that exemption, it wouldn't just apply to this new 1%, it would actually apply to the entire county sales tax. So in reality, we'd be taking in less sales tax money with this added exemption. Now, it might still be a slight increase in terms of the revenue that we bring in, but it certainly would be cut substantially, at a loss substantially that wasn't factored in our calculations. So when we calculate 1.8 million as a potential increase for the first year based on the 1% sales tax, that's based in part on our previous sales tax earnings. Well, currently we earned 1.65%. We have, that's our tax rate without any exemptions. If you end up adding that back in, then those numbers aren't even accurate anymore. And we're probably looking at a decent amount of money based on Department of Revenue numbers that we've received. So the way that it works is that we either apply it to everything, our current sales tax rate total with the increase, or we leave it the way it is, which is currently without an exemption. I know that the board has also considered that if that's the case, and this ballot measure passes with the 1% increase, that it will allow us to have a better handle next year, for example, should the board decide that certain exemptions should apply overall to the sales tax. And so this isn't by any means what I would consider a set deal by the board automatically saying, okay, well, we're not going to apply it ever. I think it's looking at the reality of this situation and why we're even asking for this ballot measure to be put on the ballot, which is the very extensive shortfall that we face in Road and Bridge. Randy, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to say that I appreciate the work that you've done on this. It was very extensive. When we realized, when that legality came up on the food, the groceries and food tax exemption, I did the quick math, and it really quickly showed that we were going to have somewhere around a 1.2% increase instead of a 1% increase in order to achieve the same shortfall. And that shortfall that we're trying to cover, again, is not for new capital projects or really big deals. It's for fixing, basically, mostly the deferred maintenance of what we have in our annual maintenance and shortfall to allow us to just simply stabilize ourselves at this time. Now, I do think that having an exemption on food would be an important thing to do ultimately if we can achieve it. The reason for that is that a lot of the wear and tear on our roads, in the unincorporated county, in the town, in all of the towns, all 4 towns, comes from the people passing through us. And so what's happened is we have been burdened, as we have been subsidized in great part by the Henderson Mine, which has been a great partner for years. But those revenues have declined substantially over the years, to the extent that in most of our rural neighborhoods, the actual road and bridge portion of your property taxes, that mill levy, is only paying about 15%, 10 to 15% of the cost of the maintenance that's actually going in there. So what's been happening is the Henderson Mines contribution to that fund, as well as a portion of the general fund, that additional funds from the general fund has been coming in to subsidize that during that time period, is my understanding. And what we're trying to do is stabilize and get back to a point where the money that's dedicated to be raised for taking care of our roads is taking care of our roads, and to the greatest extent possible is paid by the people from outside our county that are pounding our roads as they leave I-70 looking for alternate routes, or as they reach our recreation destinations. And so for that reason, to maximize that particular dynamic where we're able to get more from them, to be able to exempt, first of all, something that's a number one required sustenance, for survival, food for folks in this county, to exempt that from sales tax is a worthy goal for the future. I'd like to, when we talked about it, we thought we were just maybe going to exempt it for this 1%. We found out we couldn't legally do that. So I think what I'd like to see is that for future agendas, we start working on the project of how can we ultimately achieve that exemption from all of those sales taxes, at least on our county tax. And I think one way to do that is to get this thing passed and see if we can stabilize the hemorrhaging that's going on our road and bridge. They're doing a great job. The funds just aren't there to take care of it. Then ultimately, if we see that our sales taxes are rising with the additional traffic, which we've seen some rise in sales tax, we see how SB 260 from the state and what federal infrastructure funds we can get can help us, then we may be able to reach a point if we're seeing a surplus over and above our projections, that we can then talk about a measure to do something about exempting food from all of our county sales taxes at a later date. That would just be a goal I'd like to throw out on the table and see that we work on down the road. I think that I see a note here in chat about exemption needs to be on food and necessary items, and I'm not sure exactly what all would be included in that down the road. I think that's subject to discussion and something we can work on.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. I think that our departments didn't have the time to budget for and understand the impact on the budgets of these exemptions. And so giving ourselves a year to make that calculation and figure out how we can either do without the money that we're getting when we're taxing food sales, or raise the rates so that our revenues stay the same, or whatever else that looks like. Also something I'm interested in exploring. I do think it's the right approach at this time, knowing the urgency in our road and bridge budget, and having heard from our constituents that they want to have a conversation about this on the ballot, to go ahead and put this on the ballot. And So that's the exemption piece. And it popped into my head that we need to provide for public comment at some point. Is there any other provision of information description of the proposal that needs to happen before we move to public comment?
No, I just want the board to know that should you pass this resolution and the ballot measure be placed on the ballot and it pass, at that time, we'll end up bringing a resolution to the board to address the intergovernmental agreements that we would have with each municipality. And that will also set forth exactly how the Department of Revenue will take care of paying that percentage out. It won't be something that our treasurer will actually have to do. It'll be done through the Department of Revenue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. We'll bring you over. And I'll pause for just a moment while people find their raise hand buttons.
While we're waiting for hands, I see also a comment about and I alluded to it a moment ago, the $3.5 trillion federal infrastructure bill. Can't county get a piece of that? Some of that is coming into the region and into the county in the form of federal projects. And there may be some additions to that. There are some potential grants that may come up for special project purposes at some point down the road. However, that's not sustainable long-term, continued year after year after year after year. It's an infrastructure bill at this time that will have a shelf life. And so it's, again, not a sustainable long-term resource. And those are the kinds of factors that can allow us to adjust the sales tax, for example, with exemptions down the road if we find that we've exceeded our need and we're able to. And I promise you, we work on trying to find those grants all the time. I don't see any public comment.
I don't see any either. And thank you, Randy. I put a little minute timer. There it is. So I'm closing public comment. So other questions that we have about this proposal, Randy, or that you have?
None for me. I think I think had we not beaten this to death over the last year so hard, I'd probably have some, but I'm really familiar with almost every word of it by now. Kind of parsed it and bounced back and forth with Peter and Brian and Carl in the last few days.
Okay. Well, then I'll just make a statement. I think it's very clear that the community wants to have a conversation about this. That's what my vote, I think, is allowing the community to have a conversation on the ballot about our road and bridge revenues. I get a lot of comment about our road and bridge system. The comments typically go something like this. We recognize that your road and bridge team is working extremely hard. We see them working really hard all the time. And our road system just isn't as good as it used to be. And it's not up to our expectations. So please do something about it. I think that this is a response to that general type of comment that we received. And I look forward to a robust conversation about our road and bridge budget and how we can provide sufficient revenues to meet the expectations of the people who drive on our roads.
And also, I would say make sure that all of the people who are driving on our roads are contributing to its upkeep. And I think that the bulk of the lane miles that are driven on our roads are driven by people who are not contributing to its upkeep because they don't live here and they don't pay into this tax, the previous taxes that have been supporting it. So, and if that, I mean, I have no other comment. I'm ready to make a motion again. Yeah, I move that we approve Resolution 21-63, a resolution describing a proposal for increasing the countywide sales tax rate by 1% from 1.65% to 2.65% for the purpose of improving the safety of roads and bridges in the county by funding increased maintenance and repairs of those roads and bridges, with 25% of the revenue from that tax increase being shared back to the incorporated municipalities in the county for that purpose. and providing for other matters related to the proposal.
That was a mouthful. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The motion passes. Any other words on this topic from anybody?
I will provide the final version to Beth in a little while so that we can get that recorded, and I will provide the ballot language to the clerk and recorder tomorrow.
Okay. And Beth, please do sign both resolutions we passed for me, or Nanette is authorized as well.
Same.
Okay. Any other words?
Thank you, commissioners, for the time and the support on this resolution.
You bet. Good luck.
Thank you, Carl, for putting in all the work all these years. We're trying to bring you some backup here. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.